Chapter 707. The sudden strange feeling made Tsukuyomi frown. But then she thought that as one of the three noble sons, who also had part of the world authority of Yenwu's world, it was ridiculous that she would feel uneasy because of Shutendaji, who was used to being idle. Perhaps the uneasy thoughts came from the invading demons that the Father God and Mother God mentioned. Since the passage to the country of darkness was opened, it was normal for him to be able to sense it more clearly after arriving in the modern world. Thinking about it, Tsukuyomi felt relieved. He straightened his body, then waved his hand and patted the shoulder of a concubine who was leaning on him, making her obediently move to sit behind him. Although he didn't care about a great demon like Shutendaji, as one of the three noble sons, he had to show his dignity. A good demon aura approached the carriage at this time. Tsukuyomi nodded. No wonder this Shutendaji didn't submit to any of the three noble sons' management. He was quite capable. But that was it. This level of fighting demons might be able to stir up trouble in the modern world, but in front of the three noble sons, he could only bow his head. Not every great demon could reach the level of the legendary destructive snake that brought disaster, the Hakata no Orochi. Besides, even that scourge had been taken away by Susanoo and sealed in the divine artifact Sword of Tatsuka. At this time, a solemn voice came from the carriage. "You are Shutendaji? Why are you looking for this god?" Shutendaji, who was outside the carriage, lowered his head and said respectfully, "Greetings, Supreme Deity Tsukuyomi. Shutendaji has been living in the nearby world. Seeing the gate of the country of darkness open today, where is Supreme Deity going?" There was nothing wrong with such a question. After all, looking at Tsukuyomi's formation, it was likely that 70% of the country of darkness's combat strength had been mobilized. As for the rest, the country of darkness also needed a force to defend. Otherwise, it wouldn't be good if their own backyard was in chaos before the war was over. There was nothing wrong with it, but whether it was suitable or not was another matter. Tsukuyomi said indifferently, "Shutendaji, do I need your approval for what I want to do? On the contrary, you blocked this god's carriage without permission. How should you be punished?" Tsukuyomi didn't intend to waste time with Shutendaji, so she directly found a reason to capture this guy. If it obeyed, it would become one of his subordinate. If it resisted, he would destroy it. This guy came to his army. What could he do? "Please calm down, Supreme God." Shutendaji looked up. Shutendaji came here this time to join the Divine Sovereign's service. "I have no ill intentions." At this moment, Tsukuyomi was puzzled. This guy had always been disobedient, but this time, he suddenly said that he wanted to join them. That was too abnormal. Shutendaji sighed and said, "Shutendaji fought against a demon and was at a disadvantage. Of course, the demon didn't gain the upper hand either. But that damned human warrior and the Onmyoji took advantage of my injuries to come and demand for it. After several battles, Jio-tun was unable to recover from his injuries. If this continued, it would truly be. Besides, that mortal enemy of mine was still secretly watching. Shun-tun was truly at his wits' end. Now that he had met the supreme divinity, he finally understood the might of the three noble sons. If Shutendaji could join the supreme divinity's service, my mortal enemy wouldn't dare to provoke you. That's a good compliment. Tsukuyomi smiled indifferently, not doubting his words too much. After all, a demon like Shutendaji, who didn't belong to any side, was a loner who had to rely on himself. Perhaps Shutendaji's strength was not bad, but it was difficult for two fists to fight against four hands. To lose in a direct battle or to give up his pride and submit, he could only choose one of the two. Obviously, Shutendaji chose the latter. "Supreme Divinity, please accept me." Shutendaji bowed his head. Tsukuyomi said indifferently, "Give me your true name and then join this god. This god will bestow you the position of Divine General." This time, Shutendaji's voice sounded a little unnatural. Tsukuyomi didn't care. If a demon's true name was in the hands of others, it was equivalent to their life and death being in the hands of others. It was truly impossible to betray them. Shutendaji's hesitation was naturally reasonable. However, since he had decided to join this god, he didn't have to come if he wasn't prepared. This god didn't come out this time to waste time with you. Tsukuyomi snorted coldly. If you're unwilling, get out of this god's sight immediately. Shutendaji. As long as Shutendaji is willing. Shutendaji let out a long sigh, revealing a lonely expression. His eyes were filled with unwillingness, but in the end, he spat out a small ball of light from his mouth. Although it was called a true name, it was actually a part of his divine soul. At this moment, the ball of light slowly floated in front of the carriage. The demons carrying the carriage could reach out and grab it, but no demon dared to take it without permission. Just like Shutendaji, which one of the demons who were loyal here didn't have their true names not grasped by Tsukuyomi. They looked at Shutendaji's desperate appearance and couldn't help but sigh in their hearts, sympathizing with each other. At this moment, Tsukuyomi stretched out her hand and held the true name in her hand. Then, she said indifferently, Shutendaji, follow this god's carriage and follow this god on this expedition. Move. Supreme Divinity, I wonder what you're going to do this time. Could it be that you're going to war with one of the three noble sons? Shutendaji asked curiously. When the time comes, you'll naturally know. Tsukuyomi said indifferently. As long as you fight well for this god will naturally not treat you unfairly. Yes. Shutendaji didn't say anything else as he quietly followed behind the carriage. At this moment, Tsukuyomi no longer paid attention to this demon who had already given up his true name. In the carriage, Tsukuyomi needed the demon's true name in her hand. Then, she chuckled, opened her mouth, and swallowed the soul ball containing Shutendaji's true name. The moment Tsukuyomi swallowed the soul ball, Shutendaji, who was behind the carriage with his head lowered, suddenly smiled strangely. The mighty army of the country of darkness set off once again, setting off a huge momentum in the sky and on the ground. Compared to the so-called 100 Demons Night Parade, the latter was like the light of a firefly. It shocked the human kingdoms along the way into chaos. They didn't know what these high and mighty gods were up to. The place where Chizuko Nagato lived was also the old residence of the Nagato family. However, Saburo Nagato and Shinji Nagato moved to a new residence. Chizuko Nagato was still young and needed someone to take care of her. However, Shio, who had been taking care of her, was punished by Master Nagato because of her improper care. Now, a maidservant was temporarily transferred to take care of her. This maidservant originally served the three daughters of the Nagato family. Naturally, the treatment there was much better. Now that she was transferred here, she was somewhat unhappy. Of course, it wasn't because of the money, but because the courtyard where Chizuko Nagato lived was where Saburo Nagato's wife used to live. Haruka Narukami died of illness in this place. The servants of the Nagato family naturally had some conflicts in their hearts. In addition, Chizuko Nagato didn't like them in the Nagato family, so naturally, no servant was willing to take care of her. Saburo Nagato's attitude toward those who treated Chizuko Nagato well was very vicious. This was not Master Saburo's child, but the child of Master Nagato and Madame Narukami. It was almost an open secret among the servants of the Nagato family, but no one dared to say it face to face. Miss Chizuko, don't stay outside for too long. If you get injured again, I can't bear it. The maidservant shouted at Chizuko Nagato, who was squatting in the corner of the courtyard, without much respect. However, Chizuko Nagato didn't seem to hear it, and she didn't respond. The maidservant rolled her eyes. This Miss Chizuko was the illegitimate child of Master Nagato. Master Nagato was very protective of her, but Master Saburo would have a bad attitude toward everyone who treated Miss Chizuko well. For the servants, it was equivalent to being sandwiched between the two most powerful men in the Nagato family. Therefore, taking care of Chizuko Nagato was naturally a hard job. Call me if you need anything. Stay by yourself if you don't need anything. Just don't go out of this courtyard." The maidservant shouted again weakly, then rubbed her head. The day before yesterday, she was sent by Master Nagato to have sex with a man and obtained a month's worth of male essence. Although they could live for another month, when they came back, they would be groggy. Sometimes they would be absent-minded, as if their souls had left their bodies. Moreover, they would be very tired. Most of the women who were sent to other villages to have sex with men were like this for 2 or 3 days after they came back. Everyone just thought that this was a symptom of the curse being eased. At this time, the maidservant was extremely bored. Naturally, she was tired. Her eyelids couldn't hold up, and she gradually fell asleep. In an old courtyard with a cherry tree, Chizuko Nagato was sitting under the cherry tree at this time, holding a book and putting it on her lap, looking down. "Can you understand it?" It was a soft voice like cherry blossoms falling. Chizuko Nagato raised her head, but there was no surprise on her delicate porcelain doll-like face. She just blinked her beautiful big eyes curiously, looking at the person who appeared in front of her. A young big brother wearing clothes she had never seen before. Maybe he was older than Shinji Nagato? But compared with her father, Saburo, he looked very young. "Can't you understand it?" he asked suddenly. Chizuko Nagato shook her head, nodded, and said, "Do you want to read to me?" Then, the young big brother smiled and squatted down. Boss Luo really wanted to complain. It seemed that the young guys he had met were not afraid of him. Whether it was the group of demon children brought by Ms. Kuroshui or the children who wanted to become adults in Russia, "Okay, give it to me." Luochio nodded and reached out to Chizuko Nagato. Chizuko Nagato sent it out obediently and moved her sitting position, indicating that he could sit next to her. Boss Luo naturally did not refuse. After sitting down, he asked softly, "Where do you want to start reading?" Chizuko Nagato blinked and leaned her head over. Although the book was already in Boss Luo's hand, she still reached out and turned to a page. She pointed and looked up again. "Is this okay? Can you read it?" "Every time Shio reads here, I can't." Without asking who Shio was, Boss Luo just nodded. Even if it was a different language and grammar, in the past, he might not be able to truly master a foreign language even if he devoted 8 to 10 years. But now there was no such restriction. An ancient pond. A frog suddenly jumped into the pond. It was a sentence pattern of a haiku from the early days. After listening, Chizuko Nagato looked curiously at the small pond not far away, but she did not see the frog jumping into the pond. She seemed a little disappointed. Luochio just smiled at her action. He glanced down and intended to continue reading. But Chizuko Nagato shook her head, stretched out her palms, and covered the night at the same time. 10 fingers spread out. Even with the palms, there was no way to completely cover the pages of 2 chapters. Luochio did not move but asked, "Is it enough?" Chizuko Nagato nodded and said, "I can't finish reading." "Why?" "If I finish reading today, there will be no more tomorrow." She still blinked and said something like the truth. Luochio asked, "But even if you finish reading today, won't there be a new one tomorrow?" "Words would never disappear. As long as the imagination is still there, even if it is the same story, there will be different feelings, right?" Chizuko Nagato still shook her head. She took the book from Luochio's hand almost stubbornly and held it in her arms. "Father doesn't like me to read. He says it's useless for a woman to read. I only have this one, so there will be no more after reading it. Do you like reading?" Luochio smiled slightly. "Did Shio teach you to read?" "Yeah. But Shio doesn't read much." Chizuko Nagato whispered, "She learned it when she eavesdropped on the teacher's lesson to Brother Shinji and taught me." "What a trustworthy relative!" Boss Luo nodded. Chizuko Nagato shook her head. "Shio is my maidservant, not a relative." Luochio said, "Do you think so yourself? Just your maidservant?" "I think she is my sister." Chizuko Nagato looked a little longing. Luochio tilted his head at this time and suddenly said, "There is a frog." Really? Chizuko Nagato quickly turned her head and saw a small frog on the stone at the edge of the pond. It jumped into the water and disappeared, leaving only ripples in the water. A lotus leaf was rippling in the water. Chizuko Nagato smiled contentedly and said happily, "Did you attract the frog?" "Me?" Boss Luo shook his head. "I don't know how to chat with frogs for the time being. How can I call it?" "Oh." Chizuko Nagato nodded, then looked at the pond again with an expectant gaze. Soon after, another frog jumped out of the grass and jumped into the water. The sound of the pond water could be heard clearly. Luochio looked at Chizuko Nagato's increasingly happy look at this time. Recalling her question just now, he smiled and did not speak. Chapter 708. The idle clouds in the sky slowly passed by, and there were no more frogs next to the small pond in the ancient courtyard. Outside the long corridor of the house, not far away, the maidservant who was transferred was dozing off. Her head suddenly lowered as if she was about to wake up. Unexpectedly, such an action did not wake her up from her sleep. The maidservant fell asleep again. Chizuko Nagato also retracted her gaze at this time and looked at the big brother who suddenly appeared. She found that the other party was also looking at her at this time. Boss Luo put his finger to his lips and made a whispered gesture before smiling. Chizuko Nagato nodded as if she understood, then squatted on the edge of the pond again as if she was looking forward to another frog. The boss stood up at this time. Chizuko Nagato heard the movement and did not get up. She just squatted with her arms around her knees. She raised her face and asked curiously, "Are you leaving? Can you do something for me?" Luochio asked softly. Chizuko Nagato nodded. A small gift box suddenly appeared in the boss's palm. Chizuko Nagato's eyes widened, full of curiosity about this magical situation. "Wait a minute. Someone is coming to you. Can you help me give this box to him? However, if you don't want to give it to him, you don't have to. It depends on your own wishes. Is that okay?" Chizuko Nagato nodded. Luochio smiled slightly and sent Chizuko to Chizuko Nagato's side. Then he looked up at the cherry tree in front of him. Because it was not spring, it was no different from an ordinary tree. It's really beautiful when the cherry blossoms dance. Have you seen it? I have been fortunate enough to see it. Boss Luo finally bowed slightly to Chizuko Nagato. Goodbye. It seemed that in the blink of an eye, the big brother who suddenly appeared and then read to her disappeared. Chizuko Nagato blinked and looked at the small box that had been sent to her side. She held it up. The rectangular box, which was about the size of her palm, was very light. Chizuko Nagato shook it at this time and found that there seemed to be nothing inside. She quickly put it down again and no longer cared. Just as this mysterious big brother said, after a while, someone did come to this old courtyard looking for Chizuko Nagato, but it was obviously someone Chizuko Nagato knew. Outside the long corridor of the house, Shinji Nagato had arrived at some point and was scolding the maid who was secretly dozing off. Tsuruko Nagato heard the sound and looked over. She saw Shinji Nagato snorting coldly and waving his hand. The maid quickly walked into the room in fear. Afterward, Shinji Nagato walked towards Chizuko Nagato expressionlessly. "Brother Shin, do you want to play with me?" Chizuko Nagato blinked and asked. Shinji Nagato frowned. He didn't like the existence of Tsuruko Nagato. The servants thought that she was the bastard left by his father and Uncle Saburo's wife. This was too unbearable for Shinji Nagato, who attached great importance to the reputation of the Nagato family. What was even more unbearable was that although Master Nagato would not call Chizuko Nagato to his side all the time, he would occasionally pay attention to her when eating. This made Shinji Nagato feel a little different. Shinji Nagato vaguely felt that in his father's mind, Chizuko Nagato seemed to be much more important than him. "Does it still hurt?" Shinji Nagato asked indifferently. Chizuko Nagato touched her bandaged forehead and then shook her head. Shinji Nagato nodded and then said in a deep voice, "Remember, don't tell others that I pushed you to the ground and injured you. Otherwise, I won't let you have an easy time, let alone Shio. Do you understand?" Chizuko Nagato nodded, then stood up. "Brother Shin, play with me. Go play by yourself. I don't have time to accompany you." Shinji Nagato flicked his sleeves and left. Chizuko Nagato was injured, so he naturally would not attend the dinner. But he had to attend. This was a good opportunity to get close to Tsukiheim of the Kondo family. Chizuko Nagato watched Shinji Nagato leave. She tilted her neck and looked in another direction for a while. In the direction of the corner of the house where she was looking, a figure slowly walked out at this time. It was Emo Xiaofei under the disguise of Sasaki Kojiro. At this time, Emo Xiaofei also frowned and looked around. After hesitating for a moment, he came to Chizuko Nagato and asked tentatively, "You knew I was here early on?" It was the first time for Emo Xiaofei to observe Chizuko Nagato like this. In the past, he peeped from a distance. After all, there was no zixing in the past, let alone the identity of a Shigeru of the Kondo family. He could not walk openly in the Nagato family. This little girl was too cute. It seemed that he could see a trace of Narukami Haru between her eyebrows. But thinking of Narukami Haru's crazy and terrifying appearance in the dungeon now, Emo Xiaofei really found it difficult to connect Chizuko Nagato with Narukami Haru. He remembered Zixing's proposal again. If it was not possible to bring Saburo Nagato to the dungeon, then he might as well bring Chizuko Nagato along with him. Now that there was no one around, should he? Emo Xiaofei's gaze suddenly seemed a little uncertain. It would take a lot of effort to catch Saburo Nagato, but for a little child like Chizuko Nagato, plus, at this time, there was no one around. While he was hesitating, Emo Xiaofei suddenly saw something behind Chizuko Nagato. He looked at it subconsciously and found that the thing turned out to be a gift that could be seen everywhere. Chizuko, he secretly thought that he was really too nervous. No. How could there be such a gift box here? Although Yen Wuye's world was an alternative time, it was obviously an ancient world. How could there be such a modern gift box? This packaging method and ribbon were clearly modern products. Just as Emo Xiaofei was surprised, Chizuko Nagato quickly picked up Chizuko on the ground, hugged her in her arms, and then took a step back in front of Emo Xiaofei. I have no malice." Emo Xiaofei felt like a basin of cold water was poured over his head at this time. Feeling the vigilance in Chizuko Nagato's eyes, he had to slow down his voice. "Can you let me see your box? It may be important to me. Please let me see it, okay?" Chizuko Nagato still shook her head and took a step back again. "Give it to me." Emo Xiaofei couldn't control the impulse in his heart. He shouted in a deep voice. This modern thing that shouldn't appear here might be related to him solving the mystery of time reset. Chizuko Nagato turned and ran at this time. Emo Xiaofei was anxious. He didn't have time to explain too much and chased directly. Unexpectedly, there was a small pond in front. Chizuko Nagato didn't pay attention and fell into the water. She choked on the water. Emo Xiaofei was startled. He only felt his hands and feet were cold. What the hell am I doing? He didn't care about this feeling that made him shudder and jumped directly into the pool. Fortunately, the pool was not deep. He finally brought Chizuko Nagato to his side and brought her up. What's that sound? Who are you? What do you want to do to Miss Chizuko? Someone come. It was the maid who returned to the house to clean after being scolded by Shinji Nagato. After hearing the movement, she hurriedly came out. At first glance, she couldn't help but shout in panic. Emo Xiaofei saw that things had come to this, so he quickly ran to the maid and knocked her unconscious on the ground. He looked at Chizuko Nagato, who was unconscious after drowning, and then looked at the maid who was knocked unconscious by him on the ground. He leaned weakly on the railing with a horrified face. "This is me. Is this really me?" When Zixing quietly returned to the residence arranged for her by the Nagato family, She pretended to be her maid and retreated first. Then, she pushed open a door and walked into the bedroom. As soon as she walked in, Zixing frowned. What she saw was Emo Xiaofei sitting alone against the wall, as if he had lost his soul. Hearing the sound, Emo Xiaofei moved a little like a walking corpse, which made Zixing feel that the atmosphere was a bit inappropriate. What happened, Lord Emo? Can you help her change her clothes first? Emo Xiaofei pointed to his side at this time. Chizuko Nagato was lying on a quilt. Her body was wet. It seemed that she had not woken up yet. You help her change her clothes. I will come back later. Emo Xiaofei stood up abruptly at this time. Yes, you help her change her clothes. I will wait for you outside. Call me when you are done. He walked out of the bedroom quickly. The action of pushing and pulling the door seemed to be very heavy in Zixing's eyes. Zixing frowned immediately. She suddenly sighed through this ancient paper door. She knew that Emo Xiaofei was outside the door and did not go far. Perhaps he found a place to sit down again. Some strange syllables began to come out of her mouth. They connected together like a drizzle and finally entered Emo Xiaofei's ears. Gradually, Emo Xiaofei became absent-minded. He slowly closed his eyes. Not long after, his consciousness seemed to be banished to somewhere empty and free. After a long time, Emo Xiaofei exhaled, as if he had exhaled all the turbidity in his lungs. He only felt that his consciousness became very clear, as if he had slept well. What did you just say? Zixing had already walked out from inside. At this time, she was sitting cross-legged not far from him, resting with her eyes closed. Zixing did not open her eyes at this time. She just said indifferently, I just recited a paragraph of Mahaprajna Parmitha Heart Sutra in Sanskrit. You are too tired, so I want you to rest. Now it seems to work well. Thank you. Emo Xiaofei took a deep breath. His eyes became firm again, and then he began to talk about what he encountered. After a long time. So, the box disappeared? Zixing was more concerned about the modern box that should not have appeared. She did not mention Emo Xiaofei's state. Even when he was talking about this, his spirit became a little unstable again. Yes, I thought it fell into the pond. Then I looked for it for a long time, but I couldn't find it. Emo Xiaofei shook his head in disappointment. Zixing pondered for a moment and suddenly said, It's almost time for the banquet. We should take action. Since Chizuko Nagato is here, let's catch Saburo Nagato too. If we can solve the problem once and for all, we can't miss it. I know what to do. Emo Xiaofei nodded. I will catch Saburo Nagato. Don't worry. By the way, there is one more thing. Please say. Can you teach me the Heart Sutra from just now? When chasing Wolf was very suspicious that he had run to the wrong place. There was no unripe rice village here at all. Otherwise, with this half-beastkin's body, he couldn't even see a figure after wandering around for a long time. It was too amazing. Isn't this a barren mountain? What is that? Suddenly, a sense of oppression made Juefeng frown instinctively. He subconsciously raised his head to look at the sky, only to see a large number of black shadows flitting across the sky, accompanied by even more dense dark clouds. He could feel a different and powerful monster aura heading in a certain direction at this time. This seems to be the direction to that dead woman's shrine? Juefeng's mind turned sharply, and then he glanced at the light ball that opened from the box. This thing could not be driven away. It had been following him. It did not seem to be malicious. Instead, it was quite intelligent. Do you think I should follow and take a look? Juefeng subconsciously asked this strange light ball. It was just that this thing floated quietly beside him without any response at all. Juefeng shook his head and ignored it. He quietly chased in the direction of the large black shadow passing by. Under the dark cloud bed in the sky, the carriage that was lifted by dozens of meters of monsters had stopped. Tsukuyami, one of the three noble sons, was waiting quietly at this time. The time agreed with Amaterasu and Susanoo in her shrine last time was almost here. But the other two noble sons had not arrived yet. God Lord, are Amaterasu-sama and Susanoo too disrespectful to you? Why haven't they arrived yet? The concubine beside him said rather indignantly at this time. Tsukuyomi just smiled slightly and said indifferently, Amaterasu rules the gods of Takamagara. Many of them are in charge of the 4 directions. It is naturally troublesome to gather them all at once. As for Susanoo's shrine, it is far away overseas. These two are not like me. When the gate of the country of darkness opens, I will appear in this world. Give me some time. Susanoo, aren't you here already? With that said, Tsukuyomi stepped out of her carriage and looked at the large red brilliance in the distance. The leader was Susanoo, who was as red as blood. As for the people behind him, they were naturally the overseas evil spirits. Amaterasu rules the gods, and the all things not can be elevated to gods. Although good and bad are mixed, there are many of them. Most of Susanoo's subordinates are man-eating evil spirit. They are brave and good at fighting. As for Tsukuyomi herself, she intercepts the souls of those powerful warriors and monsters in the afterlife and reincarnates in her own country of darkness. She can be considered to be on the elite path. Tsukuyomi, I'm here. In the sky, Susanoo's voice buzzed like thunder. On the ground, in the formation of Tsukuyomi's side, Shutendaji, who had his head lowered, suddenly raised his head and looked at the red sky. His cold eyes flashed, and then he closed his eyes again, ignoring everything. But at this moment, a bright light broke through the dark clouds above the sky. High in the sky, a large number of golden figures filled with divine might began to descend quickly. The leader is naturally the goddess of light and sun, Amaterasu Amikami, who rules Takamagara. Humph! Amaterasu, you're finally here. Susanoo snorted coldly at this time as a greeting. Sister, how many gods did you bring this time? Tsukuyomi smiled slightly. Amaterasu was the first of the 3 nobles to be born. In fact, it's understandable for him to call her sister. Unlike Susanoo, who is far away overseas, his relationship with Amaterasu is better. Of course, it's only good when they meet. Since everyone is here. A cold light flashed in Susanoo's eyes, and then he looked at the ground below. I want to see what kind of evil demon dares to steal the world of Mother Goddess. Tsukuyomi was taken aback. She had some doubts about Susanoo's words, but she didn't say anything. She also looked down. What's so strange about this so-called unripe rice village? No matter how I look at it, it's just a ruin. Below, in a small area surrounded by the mountains, it was clearly a wasteland with collapsed houses, overgrown weeds, and no signs of human habitation, although he vaguely felt that his boss was on the road in this direction. However, Taisetsu didn't have the magical means of throwing people overseas like his boss. He could only run by himself. Is this thing really delicious? It's not a good idea to keep rushing. Although he didn't feel tired physically, he couldn't bear it mentally. Taisetsu simply found a city casually. At this time, he was in front of a tea-house, eating a green dumpling with a look of disgust. Forget it. Anyway, it doesn't seem to be in a hurry. I'd better go back slowly. Every time I'm fed a mouthful of dog food, I won't have any friends to cook for me soon. Taisetsu opened his mouth and swallowed a piece of dumpling. Taisetsu, so you are here. The sudden voice. Taisetsu's face changed slightly. The dumpling that he had just swallowed slipped down his throat before he could chew it. He almost suffocated. Of course not. Yu-yi. Taisetsu quickly put down the food and stood up. Why are you? I don't know if she heard me. The maid just smiled slightly. Come with me. Master asked me to assist you in completing the transaction. What about the boss? Taisetsu asked curiously. Of course, the master is doing what he likes. We just need to complete the master's orders. Don't ask too much. Yu-yi smiled, then stretched out her hand and gently stroked in front of her. Instantly, a crack appeared in front of her. The maid stretched out her hand and pulled it as if opening a curtain. She flashed into it and motioned for Taisetsu to follow her. Looking at this incredible ability, Taisetsu couldn't help but think secretly. Suppressing one of the two gods, Yen Wuye, in fact, could this maid do it with a sneeze? The Jean-Lu he wore buzzed at this time. Taisetsu lowered his head and picked up a dumpling to bite while speaking incoherently. What? You said you can do it casually? Then you should suck on a stick. Will you die if you don't pretend? Chapter 709. Gradually, it turned into a deserted village. Not to mention the slightest human figure, even the small animals in the mountains didn't seem to notice it. Moreover, the surroundings were filled with the aura of death. If this dilapidated village below was dyed black and white, then the land here would be black. Is this really the source of the world's turmoil that Father and Mother Goddess mentioned? Tsukuyomi frowned. Sister Amaterasu, I remember that when we discussed earlier, your subordinate, Oziu Shimaheim, didn't mention that this place is a land of death. Amaterasu Amikami's expression was slightly solemn. I also find it strange. But what Father and Mother Goddess said will definitely not be wrong. Let's send the vanguard down to investigate. Okay. Susanoo agreed without hesitation. He wasn't so particular and had always advocated the supremacy of force. If there was anything that dissatisfied him, he would use violence to subdue it. In the face of powerful force, any strategy was useless. So he simply waved his hand, and a team of hundreds of evil spirits rushed down from behind. At this moment, Tsukuyomi said indifferently, "These evil spirits only know how to fight. I'm afraid it's not enough to investigate. Let's add my subordinate." Tsukuyomi naturally waved her hand, but she only sent out 10 monsters that were reincarnated in the country of darkness. Of course, because they were elites, these 10 reincarnated monsters weren't inferior to the team of hundreds of evil spirits in terms of combat strength. In fact, they were much more mobile than the sea monsters. Count me in. Treat it as a joint investigation force, Amaterasu Amikami said slowly. Amaterasu Amikami said slowly. She waved her hand, and dozens of gods who had ascended from all creation fell into the ruins below. Don't underestimate the 8 million gods of Takamajiehara. However, there were only a few of them who were strong enough to fight. On average, even an ordinary demon under Susanoo would not be able to defeat a single one of the so-called gods. However, the number of 8 million was enough to make people feel powerless. At this moment, the joint forces of the 3 parties had gathered in one place. These wraiths, deities, and reincarnated demons knew that they were acting under the watch of their respective master gods. Naturally, they did not dare to be careless. Even the wraiths who were used to being violent were trying their best to be careful. There's nothing to see here. It's just a bunch of broken stones and houses. However, one of the evil spirits quickly lost his patience and threw a punch at a collapsed wall, shattering it in an instant. Where is the mist coming from? One of the earthbound spirits from Tensho frowned. Such shouts made the allied forces of the 3 parties vaguely feel that something was wrong. They all raised their heads and looked up, only to see that the sky was already covered by a thick fog. In the blink of an eye, this gray fog had already covered everything. The same situation was not only discovered by the joint forces of the 3 parties, but also by the 3 noble sons who were high up in the sky. At this moment, seeing that the joint forces were completely immersed in the thick fog that suddenly appeared, Susanoo snorted coldly. He waved his hand and turned it into a hand knife. Without saying a word, he chopped down at the thick fog below. A huge air current, accompanied by a crazy whistling sound, directly slashed above the thick gray fog, but the thick fog was directly cut open. However, the thick fog that had just been broken gathered again. Susanoo's attack seemed to have sunk into the water, and there was no movement for a moment. Wind God! Tensho Amikami waved his hand. Among the Takamagara's 8 million deities, A huge figure with a murderous look on his face and a 9-ring drum flew out. He directly summoned a gust of wind and blew towards the thick fog below. It can't be blown away. Tsukuyomi frowned secretly at this moment. If this thick fog couldn't be blown away by Tenchi's wind god, it naturally wasn't an ordinary fog. Tsukuyomi's pupils suddenly mutated, turning into circles of spiral lines as she looked down. The more she looked, the more shocked she became. Her face sank and she said in a deep voice, "Sister Tensho, this strange fog has also covered my pupils. It's really strange." "Tsukuyomi, even you." Susanoo was stunned, then he fell silent. No one knew what he was thinking. At this moment, the Amaterasu Amakami did something that shocked Susanoo and Tsukuyomi. The Amaterasu Amakami in front of them directly ordered all the gods of the Takamajihara to jump into the thick fog. 8 million deities. In fact, it was just a name. Perhaps if Takamagara continued to exist, it would be able to gather such a number one day. After all, everything could be promoted. But it was obviously not now. It was already good enough that there were tens of thousands of deities. Even so, tens of thousands was still a huge number. While the thick fog was strange, it did not occupy a large area, and it was impossible to accommodate tens of thousands of the 8 million gods. "Tsukuyomi, Susuk, don't be idle." Tensho Amakami snorted coldly. "This is related to Yen Wuyue's safety. Don't have any evil thoughts at this moment. Otherwise, Father God and Mother God will blame you. Even as Sanguiko, you won't be able to bear it." Susuk was another name of Susanoo, but he didn't like others calling him that. At this moment, Tensho shouted without any scruples, causing Susanoo's face under the ghost helmet to twitch slightly. However, he also knew the seriousness of this matter, so he snorted coldly and said straightforwardly, "All evil spirits, go down." Seeing this, Tsukuyomi also ordered her reincarnated monsters and warriors to go down together. He really didn't believe that such a small amount of fog could swallow all of Sangizi's subordinates. Roar! Roar! The earth-shaking momentum made the deities, ghosts, reincarnated warriors, and reincarnated monsters frantically rush into the thick fog. Such a huge lineup made the subordinates of Sanguiko full of confidence. However, they gradually realized that things weren't as simple as they imagined. The number of people rushing into the thick fog was increasing crazily, but there was still no change in the thick fog. When the number of troops exceeded the number of people entering the thick fog, many deities from Highland Celestial suddenly hesitated and stopped outside the thick fog. Then, it was the reincarnated warriors and monsters under Tsukuyomi. After a while, even the evil spirits, who were famous for their stupidity, found something wrong. They stopped one after another, widened their eyes, and looked at the other two subordinates of Sanguiko. They waved the big sticks in their hands fiercely as if to say, "We are not stupid." Presumptuous. Did this god ask you to stop? Suddenly, Tensho Amakami's extremely sharp voice sounded in the surroundings. Tensho Amakami ruled Takamagara. Which of the 8 million deities didn't have their real names known to her? Their life and death were in the hands of Tensho Amakami. At this moment, even if the thick fog in front of them was an extremely dangerous place, they had to bite the bullet and rush in again. After all, although they didn't know what kind of danger they would encounter if they rushed into the thick fog, at least it didn't prove that it would bring about direct death. But if they disobeyed the order of Tensho Amakami, their real names would be destroyed. Charge! For the gods! No one knows what the 8 million gods shouted, and then the troops of Takamajihara regained their original momentum, and like a hive of bees, they madly rushed into the thick fog. Tsukuyomi Susuk. Don't hold back. This is all for the Yen Wuyue world created by Father and Mother. At this time, Tensho Amakami said in a deep voice, "Can't you feel the crazy changes in the world's authority? The deity position of Sanguiko has become precarious." With the words of Tensho Amakami, the entire sky suddenly trembled. The earth also began to shake at this moment. It actually changed. Tsukuyomi was shocked at this moment, and her expression changed again and again. The so-called deity position was only known to Sanguiko, and only Sanguiko himself could sense it. In the Yenwuya world, this was the real deity position. This was the foundation of Sanguiko's domination. Although Takamagara claimed to be deities, it was actually just a trick made by Tensho Amakami. It looked good but was useless. Who is shaking the rules of this world? Susanoo, who had always been known for his bravery, was greatly frightened at this moment. The horror of standing on a cliff made his heart jump instantly. Evil spirits, go down. Fill this thick fog for me. At this moment, Susanoo no longer hesitated. If these evil spirits died, they could be slowly cultivated in the future. But if the world changed, there would be no such thing as Susanoo. Reincarnated monsters, reincarnated warriors, fight for glory. Tsukuyomi's expression was solemn at this moment, and her spiral-shaped pupils glowed with a strange light. Boom! Suddenly, there was a loud noise, and the turbulence between heaven and earth escalated again. A huge mountain not far away directly collapsed at this moment. Susanoo and Tsukuyomi looked at the same time, only to feel that their deity position was on the verge of collapse. The world authority on them even began to become irritable, as if it was about to break away from their control at any time. What the hell is this? Look at me, kill it! Susanoo roared furiously at this time, and in an instant, he pulled out the weapon at his waist, a strange dark red katana. The Totsuka sword was broken. This weapon was second only to the Totsuka sword in Susanoo's collection. But just as Susanoo was about to rush into the thick fog, he saw the fog surging as if something was about to break out of it. A huge black shadow with 8 huge heads rushed out of the thick fog in an instant. The 8 huge heads were in different directions at this moment, and the ferocious eyes stared at Susanoo at the same time. Hakata, why are you here? You can't be here. I'm not afraid of you. Susanoo madly held the treasured sword in his hand and slashed at one of the huge snake heads. But after the snake head was cut off, it immediately grew out again. Ah! Susanoo, what is he doing? At this moment, Tsukuyomi was drenched in cold sweat. Her incomparably beautiful face instantly turned gray due to illness. In front of his eyes, Susan Mikoto of the 3 noble sons seemed to have gone mad at this moment. He waved his weapon wildly while roaring angrily. Could it be that Susanoo is under an illusion? Thinking of such a possibility, Tsukuyomi suddenly became even more frightened. If Susanoo, the man of slaughter, was also trapped in the illusion, then what kind of terrifying means did the evil demon who stole the world have? Amaterasu, can I just sit here and wait for death? If we lose Susanoo, it will be even more disadvantageous for us. Tsukuyomi didn't care about calling sister affectionately at this moment, and directly looked at Amaterasu Amakami. But with just a glance, Tsukuyomi frowned. Amaterasu, why are you laughing at this time? Because I'm happy. At this time, Amaterasu Amakami showed a strange smile, but pointed at Susanoo who was going crazy below and said with a chuckle, Tsukuyomi, don't you plan to accompany Susanoo? He's the man who became one of the 3 noble sons with you. Amaterasu, what are you talking about? No. Tsukuyomi instantly thought of an extremely terrifying possibility. Even if it was a world crisis, Amaterasu Amakami wouldn't be so direct, commanding all her subordinates to rush to the front. She would only use her identity to force Susanoo and her to make the first move. And such a strange speech. Who are you? Me? Amaterasu Amakami smiled. Of course I'm you, am I not? Look at me. The Amaterasu Amakami in front of him instantly turned into Tsukuyomi. From appearance to demeanor, even the faint divine power was exactly the same. Impossible! You evil demon! Tsukuyomi took out a small odachi and held it backhanded. Amaterasu had probably fallen long ago. Now that Susanoo had fallen into the other party's trap and went crazy, he could only rely on himself to survive this computer crisis. You? Tsukuyomi sneered at this time. Look at who I am. Tsukuyomi transformed again, but in an instant, she turned into an incomparably dignified and noble beauty in a white robe with a face as pale as blood. Izanami, Mother Goddess. Tsukuyomi was startled and suddenly woke up. Don't lie to me, you evil demon. At this time, Izanami slowly waved her hand and said, Tsukuyomi, how dare you be so rude to me? Accept the punishment. I will deprive you of your authority as the Sanguiko. From now on, you will become a mortal. Tsukuyomi only felt the power brought by the divine position in her body crazily flowing away at this time. In an instant, her body began to shrivel, and her hair fell off one by one. This is not me. This is not me. Tsukuyomi looked at her skinny hands and screamed in horror, This is not me? Don't take back my power. Mother Goddess, I was wrong. I was really wrong. Don't take away my power. Izanami, however, remained motionless. She only revealed the strange smile that she had at the beginning. Taisetsu rubbed his chin and looked at the maid beside him curiously. You ye, Mississippi. Are these guys stupid? They are not stupid. Mississippi maid said indifferently. They just can't defeat the fear in their hearts. Is that so? Taisetsu shook his head. The people in front of him were all Sanguizi's subordinate. The 8 million gods, evil spirits, reincarnated warriors, and demons seemed to be on drugs. One moment they were laughing, the next moment they were crying, and some were even shouting. Even Susanoo, who had fought with him once, was like a patient in a mental hospital. Of course, among these families, Taisetsu saw the girl in a kimono beside Erex. She seemed to be called Miki? Rumble? The earth began to shake at this time. A crack suddenly appeared in the dilapidated, early rice village in front of him, and then something stretched out crazily. It was like a giant pillar, a tree trunk. This tree trunk grew crazily, and in an instant, it had surpassed the height of the mountains. It was even expanding. At the same time, the roots below stretched out crazily, absorbing the 8 million gods, evil spirits, reincarnated monsters, and samurai. These subordinates of the 3 noble sons were directly absorbed by the root. Only their heads were exposed. As for this tree trunk that emerged from the ground, it was as if it had received a huge amount of nutrients. Large amounts of branches began to grow from the top, followed by green leaves. Erex, is this your masterpiece? World-level nightmare, not bad. Yui suddenly turned around and looked behind her. Taisetsu was shocked and hurriedly turned around. He saw the strange guy he met when he first came to Yenwue. Erex, is it beautiful? Erex smiled slightly. My vessel. A touch of pink began to appear from the crown of the tree, then spread to all the branches. The cherry blossoms were in full bloom. Chapter 7:10. When the cherry blossoms were flying, it should be a beautiful scenery, but the towering cherry tree was absorbing different 8 million gods, evil spirits, reincarnated beings, and so on. It was not difficult to find that this huge cherry tree was nourished by these extraordinary creatures in Yenwue's world. So, the scene in front of them was very strange. A world-class nightmare? Taisetsu stared at the huge tree in the distance. Vaguely, he seemed to see the girl in the kimono at the center of the trunk of the cherry tree. At this time, Maiheim's body was integrated into this huge cherry tree. Her eyes were closed, and her expression was solemn. Miss Maid didn't mind Erex's attitude at all. She said indifferently, Mr. Erex's power comes from the dreams of all living things. But there are too few beautiful dreams, and they are too difficult to come by. On the contrary, if it's just a nightmare, it's much easier. Miss Yu Yi is indeed knowledgeable. Erex didn't mind being exposed at all. Or, if he couldn't see through her even with such means, he would even doubt whether the servant girl in front of him was a fake. Taisetsu looked at Erex, and then looked at Yu Yi, frowning. What's the container you just mentioned? But it's a container. Yu Yi said indifferently. It's not only used to absorb the nightmares of all the creatures under the cherry tree, but also to collect the negative energy of every human who has watched the movie in our world. Let's put it this way, anyone who watches the movie will lose their soul. In fact, they are all pulled into the story of the movie world. This story should be able to connect with Yen Wu's world, and the scenes of the movie probably overlap infinitely. Then the people who watch the movie, Yu Yi said indifferently, they will wake up naturally after the movie ends. They won't stay there all the time. And for those who have watched the movie, there should only be a special feeling after the movie. If I have to say, it should be the so-called immersive feeling. In addition, it's just a little mental fatigue, but it won't have a big impact. If it has a big impact, I'm afraid Mr. Erex wouldn't dare to release this movie, right? After all, not all powerful people are like your shop. Erex said indifferently, even I don't want to disturb the order of the Lord's world. If I want to break the order of the Lord's world, I can buy the service from your shop. But in this case, my loss outweighs my gain. Mr. Erex is too modest. Miss Maid smiled. If this dream-eating taper wanted to do it, it could do it. Of course, the main thing was that if Erex had this intention, it would be an extraordinary fortune for her master if they could make such a deal. If it could help her master get more transaction fees, Miss Maid didn't mind talking to Erex. It's almost time. Your shop can also do it for me. Palace Master Baxen, I have been looking forward to it for a long time. Erex smiled slightly. He put his hands together and then pulled them apart. A crack was born. The passage to Ba Sun Hall opened easily. After all, before this, he had stolen almost 1/3 of the world's authority. It was as easy as drinking water for him to unlock the space structure of Yen Wu's world. I'll go first. You two just treat it as a surprise attack. Erex smiled confidently and flashed into the crack in an instant. He was not afraid that Yu Yi and Taisetsu would do nothing. The club's contract spirit was paramount. There were always fearless guests who wanted to breach the contract, but there was no club who took the initiative to violate the contract. Vessel? World-class nightmare? Taisetsu shook his head. I still can't figure it out. If you want to fight, just fight directly. Why do you have to make it so complicated? Yu Yi explained, strictly speaking, Erex only stole Yen Wu's authority. This kind of theft is not considered as possession. Unless he gives up the mark of the Lord's world and completely becomes a creature under Yen Wu's rules, he can use these authorities unconditionally. Otherwise, he needs a lot of power to maintain the backlash of these authorities. In addition, he also needs to deal with the owner of Yen Wu, so he naturally needs more power. The so-called vessel is the source of power that provides him with a steady stream of power. Do you understand now? In short, it's similar to immigration? Taisetsu thought for a moment. This Erex doesn't want to have the nationality of Yen Wu's world, so he has to spend a lot of money to do things here. This money is power, right? It's very in line with the modern understanding. Yu Yi smiled. Basically, all the Black Soul envoys were respectful to her. Even Taiyinzi was full of respect. Taisetsu was an exception, but this way of getting along was not bad. No wonder the master would transform Taisetsu into a Black Soul. There are still a lot of things that I don't understand. Taisetsu shook his head. But it doesn't matter. The next step is to fight, right? In any case, this can be considered my strength. Without the scruples of his family, after transforming into the Black Soul Messenger, his body once again returned to its former appearance when he was young. Daz also recovered some of his original vitality. Besides, he worked for someone and received such a great favor. He couldn't not work hard. He directly pulled down the Zhanlu sword and returned it to its original appearance. Taisetsu walked towards the crack without saying anything. Taisetsu, wait. If you go now, you're still a bit lacking. Yuyi shook her head. Taisetsu was stunned, but when I was on Evil Spirit Island, I could already activate the power of the Jianlu sword. That's not enough. You still need to unlock some of your own potential. Only when you release more power will the Jianlu sword's power become stronger. Do I have to fight another wave of evil spirits? It seems like there's nothing left. Taisetsu glanced at the huge cherry blossom tree. There's no need. I have another way to let you unleash your potential in an instant. The servant girl smiled. Okay. Let's try it. Taisetsu didn't think too much. What method? Just feel the pain for a while. What? Taisetsu was stunned. Before he could react, a cluster of black flames appeared in Miss Maid's palm and shot onto his body. In just an instant, the huge black flames started burning on Taisetsu's body. As for the pain that came along with it, it was, it's so painful. Miss Maid smiled when she saw Taisetsu rush into the crack like a mad dog. Although she didn't hate Taisetsu's relaxed attitude, it wouldn't be good if Taisetsu's attitude spread to the other Black Soul envoys. It would take a lot of means to manage the Black Soul envoys well for the master. Seeing the crack gradually closing, Miss Maid looked back at the bottom of the huge cherry blossom tree and whispered, Mr. Erex, you are not the only one who covets Yen Wuyue, Jade Pillar of Heaven, the origin of Yen Wuyue's world. In Yasun Hall, which represented the beginning and end of everything, a faint sigh sounded. At the same time, Erex, who came through the space, stood in the center of Yasun Hall's main hall at this moment, looking at Izanagi and Izanami behind the curtain. Greetings to both of you. Erex was as elegant as ever, greeting Izanagi and Izanami with good etiquette. A low male voice behind the curtain said, Outsider, you have stolen 1/3 of this world. Are you still not satisfied? Erex smiled and said, If this 1/3 is enough for me to do something, I don't want to fight with both of you. After all, I have to take a lot of risk. However, if the two of you are willing to give me this world fragment, we can avoid a brutal battle. The low male voice was heavier at this time. You stole what originally belonged to us, and now you want us to give it to you. Sir, isn't your request too much? No, please believe me. Erex took a deep breath and said, I can guarantee that I will give you another world fragment in the future. I will never break my promise. There was silence behind the curtain. Finally, the entire Yasun Hall shook slightly. The low male voice said indifferently, Then let's fight. We will not hand over Yen Wuyue. Instead, spit out the part you stole, and we can let you leave safely. Erex sighed secretly and said faintly, Izanagi, Izanami, you two can rule a world together and stay by each other's side every day. Have you ever thought about what will happen to you when you are alone one day? Do you think you can kill me? Izanagi's voice was full of rage. This is my world. Kusanagi sword. Erex didn't say anything more. He just stepped back and left Yasun Hall directly. At the same time, a huge golden light shot out from the entrance of the main hall. In an instant, a figure rushed out of Yasun Hall. It was a stalwart man holding an ancient long sword, Kusanagi sword, and a round mirror, Yata no mirror, suspended beside him. Erex stopped smiling. According to the Western world's division of the so-called gods above the extraordinary creatures, the divine power shown by Izanagi had far exceeded the weak divine power. It almost reached the level of weak divine power. You don't even have a trace of divinity in you. How dare you touch the world fragment? You are overestimating yourself. Izanagi looked at Erex indifferently. A strong fluctuation came from Kusanagi sword and Yata no mirror at the same time. In an instant, the weather changed. This was the real change of the world. Divinity? This thing is useless at all. Erex shook his head. The more divinity you master, the more you can't extricate yourself. The deeper you sink, the more difficult it is to get out. Die. Izanagi didn't intend to argue with Erex at all, and he attacked directly. Erex flashed at this moment, cut through the space, and retreated directly out of the attack range of Kusunagi's sword. Then he smiled slightly. "Mr. Taisetsu, this is your opponent. Please help me stall him." With that said, Erex waved his hand. A figure wrapped in black flames rushed out from the cracked space gap. "It hurts!" Taisetsu, who was in so much pain that his face was distorted. Jean-Lou's sword burst out a terrifying sword light at this time. It was totally different from when he was on the evil ghost island. Daz, who was in extreme pain, was like holding his breath, and then being pricked in the most sensitive part of his body with hundreds of steel needles at the same time. At this time, he was released all of a sudden, and he no longer held his breath. That was ferocious. This guy with a sword and a mirror hanging beside him. No matter who he was, he just had to cut him down, right? Even if you have helpers, so what? Izanagi wasn't afraid at all. When he saw Taisetsu's sword coming at him, he waved Kusunagi's sword to block it, but the moment they touched, his expression changed instantly. The black flames burning on this fellow's body had actually caused him to become weak. Following that, the power behind this strike was shockingly huge. Bang! Izanagi's body couldn't withstand this terrifying attack, and his body crashed into the heavenly jade pillar below him. Several cracks that were dozens of meters long appeared on the heavenly jade pillar. "Mr. Taisetsu, please stall Izanagi." "I know. I'm F***king in pain, don't bother me." Erex didn't mind Taisetsu's rude words at the moment. He saw that the opportunity couldn't be missed. After leaving such a sentence, he rushed directly into Yahirodano. Target, Izanami. At the same time, Izanagi, who was knocked into the heavenly jade pillar, quickly broke free. Such a collision brought pain, but he wasn't really injured. He just lost his face. He flew out in a rather embarrassing manner. When he was about to make a move, the guy with unparalleled strength slashed at him again. Ding 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 ding. Lunatic. Izanagi cursed secretly, but he had to block in a panic. The black flames on this guy's body were weird and difficult to deal with. The sword he held was even more terrifying. Kusunagi's sword blocked the attack, but it kept making a sad sound. Erex broke into Yahirodano again. The one who was still sitting behind the curtain was naturally Izanami. "How about it? If you can lend me Yenwuya, I will give you a better one in the future." Erex stated his condition again. "No wonder you are fearless." Izanami finally spoke. The curtain was pulled open from both sides. Izanami, who was sitting, had an emerald magatama inlaid on her forehead, exuding a green shimmer. Izanami slowly opened her eyes and shook her head. "Unfortunately, even if you have a helper, I can't give Yenwuya away." "In that case," Erex sighed, "I can only be a bandit for once." Izanami also sighed faintly and said softly, "You asked before, if I was the only one left in this world, how would I feel, right?" Erex frowned. Suddenly, he felt something wrong. He narrowed his eyes subconsciously. Izanami's beautiful and unparalleled face suddenly became horrifying. It was like a rotten corpse with many white insects crawling on it. "Who can understand the hatred and sadness in my heart?" Izanami sighed faintly, but it was more like a cry. It suddenly became sharp like a ferocious ghost. "Go to hell when you see me like this?" In an instant, Erex only felt that the space around him was shattered directly, and the violent power tore toward his body frantically. "You? Izanagi's power is fake." Erex's face changed greatly. "It's all on you. Intermediate divine power." Hidden under Izanami's strange and terrifying appearance was a divine power that was countless times stronger than Izanagi's. It was said that Izanami died because she gave birth to Vulcan. Izanagi, in grief, killed Vulcan and went to the Netherworld Kingdom personally. Izanagi said to his wife, Izanami, through the gate of the Netherworld Kingdom, "My wife, the country we created is not complete. Please come back with me." Izanami replied happily, "It's a pity that I have eaten the food of the Netherworld Kingdom. But since my husband is looking for me, I will go back with you. Please wait for a moment, let me beg the master of the Netherworld Kingdom. But please don't look at me. Izanagi agreed, but waited for a long time without any result. Out of curiosity, he went to the palace of the Netherworld Kingdom. Izanagi ignited a flame to illuminate the surroundings. In the darkness, he found Izanami's figure, but he was shocked by her appearance. Izanami was covered with wriggling maggots and looked ugly. Izanagi was so frightened that he turned around and talked about the Netherworld Kingdom. Izanami chased after him sadly. Finally, they stood face to face across the 1,000-bait stone and made a vow of severing husband and wife. Izanami returned to the Netherworld Kingdom sadly. Izanami, who returned to the Netherworld Kingdom, found a fragment of the world in the Netherworld Kingdom. Since then, the history of the Yen-Wheel world was staggered. Chapter 7:11. Bang, 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 bang. Every time Izanagi rushed forward, Taisetsu, who was wrapped in black flames, would hit him hard in the simplest and most violent way. It was not that Izanagi did not want to use magic to attack, but this method of attack was useless against Taisetsu. The black flames on Taisetsu's body easily offset all the magic attacks from Izanagi. After losing these means, Izanagi could only choose to use the most primitive means of attack, the collision of strength with strength. Once again, Izanagi rushed up from below, and Taisetsu even slashed down with the Zhanlu sword out of habit. However, this slash made Taisetsu feel that something was different. This time, the Zhanlu sword easily cut the heavenly sword of clouds, and then the sharp blade sliced Izanagi's head like cutting tofu, easily cutting him in half. This is a doppelganger? Taisetsu immediately wondered if Izanagi had changed the way he fought. He looked around nervously, but after waiting for a while, he still found nothing. Don't look for him, Izanagi no longer exists. At this time, a space crack opened beside Taisetsu, and Miss Maid flashed out. The moment Yu-Yi appeared, she waved at Taisetsu, and the black flames that wrapped around Taisetsu's body were retracted into Miss Maid's palm, and then disappeared. Taisetsu felt like he had been carrying bricks for 3 days and 3 nights, and he twitched all over and almost fell from the sky. Even so, Taisetsu's face was pale, and he was sweating profusely, like a candle in the wind. Although Taisetsu seemed to be unparalleled when he beat up Izanagi, when the black flames disappeared, the potential that was stimulated in advance also disappeared, and Taisetsu directly entered the weakest state. Seeing this, Yu-Yi stretched out her hand, and her palm magically disappeared in the air, reaching into another magical space. When Miss Maid's palm pulled out again, there was a small, beautifully packaged bag. Eat it and you'll recover faster. Taisetsu took the small bag, opened it, and saw some cookies. He did not mind, and thought that Miss Maid would not harm him. He grabbed a handful of cookies and stuffed them into his mouth. You don't have to eat in such a hurry. Yu-Yi smiled slightly. Taisetsu was stunned. The battle is not over? Although Izanagi's body was inexplicably, there was a very strong fluctuation from the heavenly jade pillar. It was much stronger than what Izanagi had just shown. No, it's already over. Yu-Yi said indifferently, the part about us is over. Have you forgotten the content of the deal with Erex? We're only responsible for stalling one of them. Since Erex asked you to deal with Izanagi at the beginning, your task is over after Izanagi disappears. The deal is over. But why did Izanagi become so weak all of a sudden? Taisetsu stopped a cookie and asked. The cookie tasted very good and seemed to be very effective. The tingling feeling had subsided a lot, and he began to recover some strength. Izanagi was originally constructed from a small portion of Izanami's power. Now that Izanami has reclaimed this portion of power and made herself complete, Izanagi has naturally become very weak. In other words, it's just a powerless shell. It's easy for you to deal with him. Yu-Yi smiled. Taisetsu was stunned, and then his expression became a little strange. He asked subconsciously, this? Did the boss know it early? Isn't this a trap for Erex? Taisetsu, the content of the deal and what you want are all set by Erex himself. You were there at that time, weren't you? Besides, at that time, he set one of the two targets. If he only set one target, Izanami, only 1/3 of Yen Wuyue's true soul is not enough. But because we can choose one of the two, it means that in front of the customers we may meet Izanagi, who is easy to deal with, instead of Izanami, who is really difficult to deal with. Do you understand? This compromise is not only for the customers but also for us. Our master has given us a big discount. Erex didn't think of this, so he can't blame anyone. Yuyi looked at Taisetsu indifferently, and I can pretend that I didn't hear you say bad things about our master, but only this time. Okay. Thinking of the pain of being burned by the black flame, Taisetsu trembled for a while. Although it could be exchanged for a powerful burst of power, he absolutely refused to do it again. But it made sense when he thought about it. If Erex specified to deal with Izanami, then the club would also make a move. In the case of two choices, Erex couldn't blame anyone if he chose the wrong one. After knowing Luochio for some time, Taisetsu also knew a little about Luochio. The boss would not mislead the other party. All the choices were the customer's own, whether good or bad. There was a loud noise. It came from Yahiro Dano above. At the same time, cracks began to appear crazily on the heavenly jade pillar at this time, as if it could collapse at any time. The heavenly jade pillar was like a pillar that propped up the sky. If it collapsed, who knew if the sky would collapse as well? Taisetsu showed a hint of horror. Even in the state of potential eruption just now, he vaguely felt a little powerless against this kind of power. If Erex buys the service again, do I have to fight Izanami? Taisetsu asked with a solemn face. That depends on whether Erex can still come up with something that we can use, Yuyi said very calmly. After that, Yuyi looked up and then said indifferently, Erex was defeated and fled. Even if he has a container that can infinitely extract power, he is still not good enough to deal with Izanami, a low-level divine power. A streamer left from Yahiro Dano above in an instant. That was Erex. Let's leave too. Yuyi retracted her gaze, looked at Taisetsu, and said indifferently, the master's order has been completed. I have to go back to him as soon as possible. You didn't do anything at all, okay, little sister? But Taisetsu still nodded. He was very clear about his position. Although Onyx Soul's job also included looking for potential customers, but he was not interested in this aspect at all. Instead, this situation of appearing as a hired thug was quite timely. Originally, he had always been a hired thug. Now that there was no worry, he didn't have to worry about fighting. But at this time, the dark clouds were pressing down. A crazy black wind blew down from Yahiro Dano above, accompanied by a shrill cry, "Do you want to escape? Intruder!" As soon as the voice sounded, a figure suddenly appeared. Taisetsu looked at it. Even with his nerves that were used to big scenes, he couldn't help but be shocked. This guy's body was all rotten. All the ugly words in the world were not enough to describe it. Our work this time has been completed. We won't do anything else for the time being. Yuyi nodded elegantly at Izanami, please rest assured. Izanami's rotten eyes were tightly locked on Yuyi. An extremely dangerous feeling made her spirit beat wildly. However, she had turned into an extreme character early on. The warning sign in her heart instantly covered the resentment in her heart. Izanami opened her mouth in a voice that seemed to have been burned by fire. Do you think that by saying that, you can stop messing up my world of Yen Wuyue? Stay here and become like me under the erosion of the water of the underworld? Miss Maid glanced at him blankly, waved her hand, and drew a crack, sucking Taisetsu into it. Just as Taisetsu entered the crack, a huge water ball expanded with Izanami as the center point. It directly sucked Yuyi in. This liquid glowed with a yellow light and exuded a strange stench. It was one of the most filthy things. Anything that touched it would be corroded instantly. No matter how holy it was, it would be polluted under its erosion. Don't touch me with this dirty thing. Bang! Miss Maid's blue eyes suddenly condensed. Her expression was cold and ruthless. Black flames rose suddenly. The water of the underworld was melted in an instant. Izanami's eyes were filled with horror. This is a great divine power. It's impossible. How can there be a great divine power in this small fragment world? Izanami, I've said that we won't do anything to Yenwuyue for the time being. If you continue to pester me, I can only turn to automatic defense. Miss Maid finally withdrew the black flames on her body and calmed down. Izanami was surprised at this time, but she didn't attack again. If she really faced a great divine power, she could only be controlled by her quietly, even in this fragment world that she dominated. However, if you need help, you can also find us. Miss Maid waved her hand, and a black card without a mark appeared in front of Izanami. Izanami grabbed the card. The moment she caught it, she became silent. We just represent the guests, so there's no right or wrong. For us, the customers are the first. Please understand. Miss Maid picked up her skirt, smiled slightly, and left through the space. Izanami was silent for a long time. She looked at the heavenly jade pillar that was about to collapse and muttered to herself, "The legend is true. This place really exists. How are you? Did that monster do anything to you?" After being taken away by Yu Yi, Taisetsu came directly to a plain. He could see the huge towering cherry tree in the distance. He was secretly anxious. After a while, Yu Yi appeared in front of him. Miss Maid shook her head and said indifferently, "Nothing, just a little promotion, so I'm a little late." Looking at Yu Ye's unscathed appearance, Taisetsu nodded, "So let's go back now. Where's the boss?" "You go back first." Yu Yi shook her head. Taisetsu was stunned. "Don't you go back?" Taisetsu felt incredulous. Didn't Miss Maid just say that she wanted to go back as soon as possible? Yu Yi sighed, then glanced at her skirt, frowned, and said, "The clothes are torn, and it still has a dirty smell. I have to wash it. It's a dereliction of duty to come to the master's side like this. Your skirt is just missing a corner. It's only the size of a fingernail. Why don't you go and wash up too? You are quite dirty." Yu Yi looked at Taisetsu again, quite serious. "I'll just find a pool to wash up." Taisetsu was defeated. "Miss Tsukiheim, the Nagato family came to invite you to dinner." Outside the door, the samurai of the Kondo family respectfully passed the message. Zixing just said indifferently at this time, "I'm a little uncomfortable, but it's not good to refuse the invitation, so I will wear a veil to attend. In addition, I won't speak at the banquet. If the Nagato family has any questions, you can answer them for me." "Yes," the samurai responded again. Zixing then waved her hand. The maid, who had been dressed up by her early, trembled and reached out to open the door of the room with a frightened look. After everyone left, Zixing opened the bedroom door. At this time, Emo Xiaofei carried Chizuko Nagato in one hand and walked out with a man on the other. The person being carried was naturally Saburo Nagato. After so many resets, Emo Xiaofei did not encounter any obstacles to deal with Saburo Nagato easily. "Ready, let's go," Emo Xiaofei said solemnly. "I hope we can solve all these mysteries tonight." The two already knew the way to enter the dungeon. This time, after entering the dungeon, Zixing and Emo Xiaofei did not walk to the longevity dungeon at the fork, but went directly to the place where Narukami Haru was imprisoned. The two stopped at the corner and put down Chizuko Nagato and Saburo Nagato. "What should we do now?" Emo Xiaofei looked at Chizuko Nagato and Saburo Nagato and couldn't help but ask directly. For some reason, Chizuko Nagato had not woken up after drowning, but her breathing was very stable. Zixing thought for a while and said, "Narukami Haru's reaction to Chizuko Nagato is very intense. This time, let's try Saburo Nagato first." "Okay." Emo Xiaofei did not hesitate. At this time, he glanced at the cage at the end of the corner. Narukami Haru was still disheveled, and he did not respond to anything. Emo Xiaofei took a deep breath and twisted Saburo Nagato's ear hard. The pain woke Saburo Nagato up. Emo Xiaofei took advantage of the moment when Saburo Nagato had not completely woken up. He directly carried his body and then slammed it out of here. Boom! The dull sound of the body falling to the ground. Such a sudden fall immediately woke Saburo Nagato up completely. He just remembered that he was hiding in the room alone and drinking. Then, he seemed to be knocked by something. However, it was dim in front of him with only the flickering fire. Saburo Nagato got up from the ground, shook his head hard, and looked forward subconsciously. At this time, Narukami Haru, who heard the movement, instinctively raised his head. 4 eyes met. Saburo Nagato's face suddenly became extremely ugly. "Haru," Saburo Nagato shouted in a low voice, but he took a step back subconsciously. He quickly looked back behind him, but there was no one around. He couldn't help but smile bitterly, muttering to himself, "Except for my big brother, who else knows about this place? It seems that I'm really having a nightmare. Did I drink too much again today?" Saburo Nagato shook his head and finally sighed, looking at Narukami Haru in the cell. Narukami Haru looked at him quietly at this time without any reaction. Saburo Nagato took a deep breath, hesitated for a moment, and stepped forward. Finally, across a fence, Saburo Nagato silently looked at Narukami Haru, who now looked terrifying. He suddenly smiled bitterly. "Big brother is right. I'm really a coward. I know you are here, but I only dare to approach you in my dream. I'm sorry, Haru." Narukami Haru seemed to have reacted to Saburo Nagato's voice. He suddenly stepped forward, grabbed the fence with both hands, and widened his eyes. "Really? You still hate me so much?" Saburo Nagato sighed. "If I can turn back time, I won't hurt you." Really, 10 years ago, when he was a fledgling, she had just grown up. She was the successor of the shrines which Anne was in her prime. He vowed to take her back to his home. Chapter 7:12. Sutra 9. Hidden Dragon Do Not Use. Sutra 4. Or leap into the abyss, do not blame. Hidden Dragon in the Abyss. Saburo Nagato had been concentrating on the practice of swordsmanship for 15 years. His goal was to catch up with his older brother. His brother was 12 years older than him and had become a samurai at the age of 17. Now that his brother was getting older, he was at the age of promotion. The young Saburo Nagato believed that he would be able to achieve more than his brother. Hidden Dragon in the Abyss amazed the world with a single brilliant feat: marriage. When he just came back from training, his brother came to the place where he lived. Saburo Nagato was surprised to listen to his brother's suggestion. Saburo Nagato subconsciously thought that his brother Nagato Munakika seemed to have a family when he was his age. Now Shinji, his nephew, was almost 7 years old. He could learn swordsmanship in the coming year. Nagato Munakika, who was almost 40 years old, was obviously older than Saburo Nagato's impression. He had white hair on both temples. When did it happen? Saburo Nagato looked at the white hair on his brother's temples and seemed a little distracted. Her name is Haru Narukami. She is the successor of the shrine's next Miko. Nagato Munakika said calmly, "I have already discussed with the current Miko. Haru Narukami is not suitable to take over the position of Miko. Miko-sama intends to choose another suitable candidate. Haru Narukami has grown up and should consider marriage. Since you are also at the age of marriage, I will help you agree to this marriage." Nagato Munakika, who had inherited the Nagato family business, had unquestionable power in the Nagato family. Saburo Nagato was obsessed with the practice of swordsmanship. He didn't think much about his marriage. However, an elder brother was like a father. Saburo Nagato didn't expect Nagato Munakika's arrangement, but he didn't resist. "I will listen to my brother's arrangement." Saburo Nagato nodded directly. Haru Narakami was a child adopted by the Miko. She had attended the annual ritual activities of Unripe Rice Village several times. Saburo Nagato had already seen her. She was indeed an excellent woman, so he didn't resist his brother's arrangement. But he was more eager for another thing. "Brother, please allow me to practice the secret of the Nagato family. I feel that my strength can no longer improve." This was the foundation of the Nagato family's business. In the beginning, the ancestor of the Nagato family was able to survive the battle with the powerful fox demon in the Unripe Rice Village area because of the secret art. He was rewarded by the Unripe Rice Village as a fief. However, only those who inherited the family business had the qualifications to practice and bestow the esoteric profoundness. Even if Saburo Nagato was a brother of Nagato Munakika, he was not qualified to practice it. Nagato Munakika looked at Saburo Nagato for a long time with a cold expression. In the end, he just said, "We will talk about this after you get married." Saburo Nagato could only give up asking. Looking at Nagato Munakika's back, Saburo Nagato whispered to himself, "Brother, are you so afraid that I will surpass you?" The Nagato family's kami. The news of the marriage spread quickly, and people talked about it enthusiastically. When Saburo Nagato went out, praises could be heard everywhere. This made him feel inexplicably irritable. He made a decision. Before getting married, he would quietly go to the mountain to see his fiancée, Haru Narakami. The people of Unripe Rice Village were familiar with the shrine used for worship. When he came to the shrine, Saburo Nagato didn't see the witch presiding here. He waited outside the shrine for a while. He didn't even see Haru Narakami, but he couldn't help but be fascinated by the beautiful scenery on the mountain. A few years ago, Saburo Nagato traveled outside and went to many places. There were many places more beautiful than this mountain scenery, but at this time, he had a thought that he couldn't compare. It was probably because he felt a rare sense of tranquility. There was a path leading to the back of the shrine. Saburo Nagato walked past it unconsciously. When he turned around, he came to a cave. Perhaps the children in the village had come to this place to explore when they were young. However, Saburo Nagato, who had established a goal since childhood, had been working hard to train himself since he was a child. He had never let himself relax for a day. The entrance of the cave behind the shrine had a ban put down by the shrine. Saburo Nagato was curious. With the young man's temperament, he went into the cave without hesitation. He gradually walked in and vaguely heard the sound of water flowing. There should be a water source in this cave. There was indeed a water source. It was a naturally formed pool. When Saburo Nagato saw this pool, he thought that the water here should be cold. So, does the person washing her body here at this time also feel cold? The woman washing her long hair in the water lowered her head. Under the illumination of the lit oil fire, it was like a painting. They met here. In the water, she had already noticed Saburo Nagato's arrival. Her face was slightly red, and she covered her body with both hands. She completely sank into the water, revealing only her face. Saburo Nagato watched obsessively. He suddenly realized that the marriage arranged by his brother was very good. Saburo Nagato turned around. However, he said that he had no intention of breaking in. Even so, he would never forget this scene in his life. Under the woman's surprised gaze, Saburo Nagato left the cave with spring water without looking back. However, it did not mean that they would never meet again. The next day, Saburo Nagato came again, but he did not go anywhere. He just stood quietly in front of the shrine for a long time. Haru Narakami did not come out. It was not until late at night that Saburo Nagato left. Another day, Saburo Nagato came again. Almost at the same time, he stood quietly until the moon set before leaving. Day after day, the wind and rain were slanted, and the sun was in the sky. The wind and rain did not change. Saburo-sama, you don't have to do this. Haru is your wife, and she will not blame you. The gate of the shrine finally opened one day. I finally see you. Saburo Nagato smiled slightly and turned to leave. I will come again tomorrow. Tomorrow came, and the day after, the wind and rain did not change. Saburo Nagato began to wave the wooden sword in his hand in front of the shrine hall, while Haru Narukami was cleaning the courtyard. There was prosperity in spring, fish in summer, wild geese in autumn, and snow in winter. During the long stone steps leading to the shrine, the days passed just like that. The next year, Saburo Nagato married Haru Narukami. It happened to be the day when cherry blossoms bloomed. Time passed quickly for newlyweds. The Nagato family also began to build a new house. The head of the Nagato family was still Nagato Munakika. Shinji Nagato, who had reached the age of learning, also began to practice the secret of the Nagato family's swordsmanship under the guidance of Nagato Munakika. The news of the war that broke out outside was passed to Unripe Rice Village by the traveling merchants passing by. Saburo Nagato suddenly came in front of Nagato Munakika. He looked at his brother but found that the white hair on his brother's temples seemed to be less. Is it just an illusion? His brother's complexion did not seem to be good. Are you going to make a name for yourself? Nagato Munakika was guiding Shinji Nagato's practice. When he heard the words, he waved his hand and let the young Shinji Nagato leave. Yes, only by making a name for myself on the battlefield can I become a true samurai. Nagato Munakika walked to the place where the weapons were placed, reached out, picked up a katana, and threw it in front of Saburo Nagato. The katana had not been sharpened yet. At the same time, Nagato Munakika also picked up the katana that had not been sharpened yet. If you defeat me, I will allow you to leave, and I will fund you to bring your family to the battlefield. Nagato Munakika was always indifferent, but if you lose, you have to promise me one condition. Otherwise, this matter will be treated as if it never happened. Brother, you can't always maintain your peak state. Saburo Nagato did not hesitate and picked up the katana directly. Even as a newlywed, he had never slacked off in practicing swordsmanship. He even let Haru Narukami guard the empty room when he practiced until late at night. One sword. Nagato Munakika's sword exceeded Saburo Nagato's imagination. Saburo Nagato could hardly hold the unsharpened katana in his hand. You can't beat me. Nagato Munakika was like an insurmountable mountain. For Saburo Nagato, it had always been like this. Just one move. I can only resist one move? All these years of hard work. Is it so cheap? No. Saburo Nagato raised the katana again and staked everything on one throw. 2 moves. This time, Saburo Nagato resisted 2 moves from Nagato Munakika, but it was not something to be happy about. His katana had been swept to the ground. At the same time, there was a bright red bloodstain on his wrist. Saburo Nagato covered his wound in pain and looked at his brother in horror. The katana was sharpened, but it was so sharp. You secretly learned the profound meaning. Nagato Munakika snorted coldly. I didn't. Nagato Munakika sneered and said, I teach Shinji every day. Do you think I don't know that you are hiding and secretly learning? San Lang, if it weren't for the fact that you're my younger brother, I would have chopped off your palm with that sword strike just now, making you unable to wield a blade for the rest of your life, just based on the crime of secretly learning the secret technique without permission. Brother, Saburo Nagato knelt on the ground in horror. Brother, I am more suitable to learn the Nagato family's profound meaning swordsmanship than Shinji. Please let me become a real samurai. Send Narukami Haru to me. What? Nagato Munakika put down the katana and said calmly, Send your wife to me. I can teach you the profound meaning of the profound meaning and support you to join the battlefield to make contributions and become a samurai. Nagato Munakika, how dare you? Don't forget that you secretly learned it. Nagato Munakika left indifferently, only tonight. After the beginning of spring, Saburo Nagato led 10 people to the battlefield under the congratulations of the villagers expressionlessly. In the same year, Chizuko Nagato was born. In a few years, Saburo Nagato only came back a few times and left in a hurry. Chizuko Nagato was already 6 years old. Narukami Haru died of illness. After that, Saburo Nagato returned to Nagato's house alone to recuperate. Sure enough, you are just a coward. Nagato Munakika seemed to know everything. From now on, you will stay like a stray dog. You can't go anywhere with your deserter body. Yes. Saburo Nagato in front of him seemed to think that he was in a dream. He looked at Narukami Haru in the cage, repenting what he had done little by little. Death is too terrifying. His face was pale as he recalled what happened on the battlefield. Someone's intestines were hanging on my body, and someone's head flew to me. I was buried in the corpses until the night. It seemed that there were countless resentful spirits around me. I couldn't feel any warmth. After returning to Nagato's house, I couldn't even pick up the sword once. Not even once. I don't dare to face you, Saburo Nagato said painfully. Haru, I took what you exchanged from your brother, but I failed to achieve anything. In the end, I could only escape back to this place. Maybe I should die, but I don't even have the courage to die. His voice was not loud, but in this quiet dungeon, it was enough for Zixing and Emo Xiaofei, who were hiding, to hear it clearly. The reason why Narukami Haru was imprisoned here for dying of illness was that she suddenly went crazy and planned to tell others about the deal made by Saburo Nagato and Nagato Munakika. Those secrets that everyone might have known for a long time, but they didn't say it. Everyone inside and outside the aristocratic family knew everything, but they couldn't be so straightforward. My brother said that he won't kill you, but he won't let you see anyone. I don't even have the courage to resist. Saburo Nagato closed his eyes. Once is fine. Even if it's just a dream, once is fine. Let me have the courage. Ah! Saburo Nagato roared. Chong. Men. Zone. Near. No. Coward. Fu. He took a deep look at Narukami Haru again. Haru? I will bring Nagato Munakika's head to see you. Turning around and running, this man who thought he was in a dream had the courage to do so. Before Saburo Nagato went crazy, Zixing pulled Emo Xiaofei and hid again, not letting Saburo Nagato find them until he walked all the way out of the dungeon. Emo Xiaofei and Zixing were silent. After a long time, Zixing said calmly, "This time doesn't seem to be reset." Emo Xiaofei glanced at Tsuruko Nagato sadly. What Saburo Nagato did was very depressing, and he couldn't even be called a man. It was just that this kind of thing, even in the real world outside the movie, had always been common. Even in this civilized society, it seemed that she should have resisted Saburo Nagato. Emo Xiaofei said quietly. In your male-dominated society? Zixing sneered. Emo Xiaofei took a deep breath, but he silently recited the scripture that Zixing gave him in his heart. Saburo Nagato thought that he was still in a drunken dream. He was too excited. Maybe he will really deal with Nagato Munakika. Zixing frowned suddenly. Emo Xiaofei suddenly raised his head at this moment. He stretched out his hand and grabbed toward the wall next to him. He grabbed a torch directly into his hand. My power is back. The cherry tree suddenly fell a lot. Countless cherry blossoms fell from the sky like a rain of flowers. Boss! Taisetsu appeared on a hillside. At this time, Boss Luo looked alone in the distance. After hearing Taisetsu's voice, he turned around. Taisetsu pulled his clothes at this time, then sniffed again. He just took 2 steps forward, then he seemed to remember something and took 2 steps back. What's wrong? Luochio looked at Taisetsu's action curiously. Nothing. I'm dirty. Luochio was taken aback, then nodded. Where is Yu Yi? She should be back soon. She said she was dealing with some things. Taisetsu didn't dare to say that Miss Maid was going to wash up now. Luochu shook his head, smiled, and suddenly said, Taisetsu, let me ask you a question. Okay, ask away. Chapter 713. Being in a dangerous place, losing all the supernatural powers, and losing the capital to settle down, anyone could only become uneasy. No matter how calm they appeared, they couldn't be at ease in their hearts. Almost at the moment Emo Xiaofei said that his power had returned, Zixing tried to communicate with her greedy wolf, but she failed in the end. However, her demon beast power strangely recovered a weak trace. She was originally seriously injured. Because of Zhuifeng's help, she was able to recover some of her power after a few days of recuperation. However, the trace of demon beast power she recovered at this time was far from the time she entered Yan Wuyue's body. Not fully recovered. Emo Xiaofei quickly shook his head. At most, it's about 10%. That's strange. Zixing said, Master Emo, since a part of the power can be recovered, it means that there is a chance to fully recover. Moreover, this also means that your and my power have not completely disappeared. The reason why the power can't be called out is probably because it is suppressed by something. Emo Xiaofei's eyes lit up. In other words, my power can be restored now because the thing suppressing me has disappeared? Zixing said with uncertainty, it may also be that this thing is weak. Continue to test Narukami Haru or leave first. Saburo Nagato is not in a good state. Emo Xiaofei said quickly. Once he finds Nagato Munakika, I am afraid that Nagato Munakika will immediately speculate that he has been to the dungeon from Saburo Nagato's reaction. Nagato Munakika may excuse himself to leave the banquet. I have fought with Nagato Munakika many times. To be honest, even if I recover this little bit, I am afraid I am not his opponent. That was an unbelievably strong guy. He was clearly so old. Zixing frowned at this time. Outside the dungeon, there seems to be movement. I feel a strange aura. Because she had also recovered a trace of demon beast power, Zixing's sense of touch had also become sharper. Emo Xiaofei closed his eyes at this time, fully using the recovered power to strengthen his hearing. His consciousness seemed to accelerate in an instant, turning back the original route. He suddenly opened his eyes. Nagato Munakika is back. So fast. On the ground, to be precise, in the courtyard of Nagato Munakika's residence, Nagato Munakika was looking at Saburo Nagato indifferently. Munakika. Close. Saburo Nagato let out a low and repressed roar, staring at his brother. Sanlang, didn't I tell you that you are not allowed to approach the dungeon? It seems that you didn't listen to me well. Nagato Munakika shook his head. You really disappoint me. If it weren't for the servants quietly telling me that they couldn't find you, I wouldn't have made up an excuse to leave the banquet. Do you know that this is a banquet with the presence of Miss Tsukihime of the Kondo family, and it has a great effect on the Nagato family? Have you been letting people monitor me? Saburo Nagato's eyes were about to spit fire. The anger that kept rising and the hatred that had been suppressed for many years made him unable to distinguish whether this was a dream or reality. Nagato Munakika said calmly, I consider that you are also the bloodline of the Nagato family, so even if you become a deserter, I will tolerate you. But you are really too disobedient. Since you don't want to listen, then don't stay. A strange smile appeared on his face. This smile made Saburo Nagato instantly cool down with just a glance. This was not a smile that a normal person would have. At the same time, Saburo Nagato saw some strange white slender whiskers on Nagato Munakika's cheek. At the same time, something seemed to be swaying behind Nagato Munakika. It looked like a tail. Munakika, what are you? Oh! Nagato Munakika reached out and touched his cheek, then looked at the moon in the sky, and then said calmly, It's almost a full moon. You also drank tonight. It seems that you can't control yourself well. But it doesn't matter. After all, I have decided to cut you off tonight. Monster! Saburo Nagato shuddered suddenly. You are not my brother. You are a monster. or you have possessed my brother's body. Such thoughts made Saburo Nagato understand many things. Since his brother suddenly asked for his wife, Saburo Nagato felt that his brother was extremely unfamiliar. At that time, he offered his wife, Narukami Haru, in order to get funding and the secret of the Nagato family. Now, he was extremely regretful. Nagato Munakika was like a demon. He even began to build the Longevity Underground Palace. What's more, since he escaped from the battlefield, Saburo Nagato even blinded his conscience. He had been quietly dealing with the villagers who wanted to fight the curse and escape privately for Nagato Munakika, causing them to die as a result of the curse. Possessed monster? You don't understand at all. Nagato Munakika shook his head at this time. How can you understand the true secret of the Nagato family? Nagato Munakika was unwilling to say more to Saburo Nagato. His eyes suddenly froze, revealing a strange blue light. At the same time, Nagato Munakika opened his palm, and a dark blue flame appeared out of thin air. This is the fire of the demon fox. Rest assured, I will make you feel no pain. As soon as Nagato Munakika finished speaking, he waved his hand in an instant. The dark blue fire of the demon fox bounced directly on Saburo Nagato's body. However, this so-called fire of the demon fox directly entered Saburo Nagato's body. At this time, Saburo Nagato looked at his chest in surprise. He even hurriedly pulled open the clothes on his body, but he still couldn't see any scars. Sure enough, this is still a dream. Because of my hatred for my brother, I directly regard him as a monster. Saburo Nagato shook his head. It's better to wake up from this kind of dream. After waking up, everything will return to its original state. But in the blink of an eye, a pain far worse than being hit by a hostile soldier's sword tip on the battlefield instantly flooded Saburo Nagato's nerves. Fire. A lot of blue flames emerged from his body. These flames directly burned his entire body. It was an indescribable pain. Saburo Nagato fell directly to the ground, grasping the weeds in the courtyard with his palms. He exhausted his last trace of strength. He looked up and saw Nagato Munakika's increasingly strange appearance. Countless questions could not be voiced at this moment. Nagato Munakika walked in at this time, looked at Saburo Nagato's desperate eyes, and said calmly, "Since you are also a member of Nagato's family, I will tell you the truth. I am Nagato Munakika. I am not possessed by a monster. I just got the power of the demon fox. As for the method, you don't need to know." Munakika. Saburo Nagato wanted to reach out and grab Nagato Munakika's leg. He couldn't grab it and everything fell through. Sorry, he couldn't do it in the end. At the same time, Zixing and Emo Xiaofei, who had been chasing all the way, were hiding in Nagato Munakika's bedroom. Through the gap in the window, they witnessed everything that happened. Nagato Munakika is actually a monster? Emo Xiaofei lowered his voice. But this also explained why Nagato Munakika was too powerful. He was not like an ordinary person. It's strange. How can a monster's aura be so messy? Zixing frowned. Her eyes were locked on Nagato Munakika's body, showing a very puzzled expression. Nagato Munakika lifted Saburo Nagato's body with his foot. After confirming that the person was completely dead, he suddenly frowned. Is someone hiding? Emo Xiaofei's heart tightened, thinking that his hiding place had been discovered by Nagato Munakika. He even prepared to resist. Unexpectedly, Nagato Munakika suddenly looked in the direction of an ancient tree in the courtyard at this time. Demon Fox, how dare you kill a human? However, another soft voice sounded, and a figure walked out from under the ancient tree. Emo Xiaofei looked hard, but was surprised. How could it be her? Why is she here? Zixing showed a puzzled look. Emo Xiaofei quickly said, "This is the goddess I was talking about. You know, because I lost my power, I haven't paid attention to her for a long time. I just don't know why she suddenly appeared here. She seems to have regained her power. However, Purple Star made a shushing gesture and looked over with a dignified expression. At this time, the one who walked out from under the ancient tree was Kobayashi Haim, who fell into the unripe rice village's time reset at the same time as Mo Xiaofei. I feel a weak demon aura, wondering who it is. Turns out that you, the demon fox, are killing innocent people here. Kobayashi Haim's face was cold. She was imposing without being angry. God! Nagato Munakika frowned. His expression was solemn, but he was still calm. You are very weak. I can feel it. This little bit of God has no effect on me. Arrogant. You don't know what the power of God is. Kobayashi Haim snorted again. Her current state was indeed very bad. Her divine power was empty. However, as one of the three goddesses born by Amaterasu Amikami, she was tainted with the aura of the sun goddess, Amaterasu. She had a strong restraint against all evil. It's just a fake. Nagato Munakika's face showed a strange smile again. The cyan demon fox fire appeared in Nagato Munakika's palm again. Kobayashi Haim had seen the strangeness of Nagato Munakika's demon fox fire not long ago. She didn't dare to be careless. She pushed out her hands and put down a barrier in front of her that could attack in a whisper. This was a barrier that could resist most evil creatures. The source of power was not divine power, but the divine item given by Amaterasu Amikami that she wore. It was because of such a treasure that Kobayashi Haim was still fearless of a demon like Nagato Munakika even when her divine power was empty. Chi-chi. Chi-chi. The cyan demon fox fire directly attached to Kobayashi Haim's barrier and burned frantically. Intrude. Kobayashi Haim felt that something incredible happened quietly. This kind of demon fox fire actually easily tore apart the enchantment released by her precious treasure and directly adhered to her body. What kind of fire is this? This demon fox fire instantly spread all over her body and began to burn her divine body. With great pain, Kobayashi Haim knelt on the ground in an instant. But after all, unlike a mortal body like Saburo Nagato, Kobayashi Haim was still struggling to hold on at this moment. However, Kobayashi Haim's consciousness quickly began to dissipate under the attack of demon fox fire. She didn't hold on for long before fainting directly. Nagato Munakika walked to Kobayashi Haim at this time, turned her body over, and lifted Kobayashi Haim up without saying a word. Nagato Munakika glanced at the upcoming full moon in the sky at this time. He suddenly sneered, picked up Kobayashi Haim's body, and returned to his bedroom. Mo Xiaofei and Zixing tried to hide as much as possible at this time, holding all their breath. Nagato Munakika didn't seem to notice that there were outsiders hiding in his room. He directly carried Kobayashi Haim's body and walked into the mansion's dungeon through the secret passage in the bedroom. What kind of fire is that? Demon fox fire, it's too scary. Mo Xiaofei was a little afraid at this time. He didn't know if he could resist it if his superpower was fully recovered. Zixing muttered to herself at this time, why is this blue fire so similar to the legendary Green Lotus Hellfire of Kelowna Fox Clan? Green Lotus Hellfire? Seeing that Nagato Munakika had entered the dungeon, Mo Xiaofei spoke a little louder at this time. Zixing nodded. Green Lotus Hellfire is a strange flame that only the Fox Clan of Kelowna Fox Clan can master. It can be traced back to the Shang dynasty. Do you know Daji? Investiture of the Gods? Mo Xiaofei nodded subconsciously, but this is not a novel. Is it fictional? Lord Mo Kelowna is much bigger than you think. Zixing shook her head. It's not convenient to talk about this kind of thing at this time. But if you want to know, you can go back and ask Dragon Lord. Kelowna Dragon Lord must know more than the records of my greedy wolf clan. Mo Xiaofei knew that Zixing seemed to have other concerns in her heart, so he did not ask immediately. He just planned in his heart that if he could go back safely, he must train his teacher well. The two had their own thoughts in this bedroom, But there was one thing that made Mo Xiaofei very happy. Time. So far, the time had not been reset. The secret of the Nagato family seemed to have been revealed. Mo Xiaofei subconsciously looked at Chizuko Nagato. She had not been able to wake up until now. If the plot of Yen Wuye's world and the movie world were still connected, then a few days later, when Mo Xiaofei's reset time could not be reached, would Chizuko Nagato still die strangely? After a long time, Zixing sighed and said, I think we should leave first. I'm afraid Nagato Munakiko will not come out for a while. Mo Xiaofei nodded. This time, he also wanted to see if time would reset after 3 days. At this time, if he recklessly came into close contact with Nagato Munakika, it would be unwise. The strength of the two sides was a bit different, so he could only think twice before taking action. Send Chizuko Nagato back first. Nagato Munakika should not have found out that Kondo Tsukihime at the banquet was a disguise. This time, you were not exposed. We can stay in Nagato's house temporarily. Zixing looked at Mo Xiaofei and said her plan. Okay. Startled birds flew out of the forest. Behind was a huge cherry tree, and in front was an old shrine. Miss Maid, who had just finished the last step leading to the shrine, was sandwiched between the two at this time. Yi just glanced at the shrine, then glanced at the wooden fence in front of the shrine used to hang the prayer sign. She crossed the shrine directly and walked to the back of the shrine from the trail behind the shrine. Soon after, Yi came to the entrance of a cave with a rope for ceiling hanging at the entrance. Yi took a step forward, and her body appeared directly in the cave. When she came to the edge of the pool deep in the cave, someone had already come here. She was wearing a white kimono. The young witch of the shrine in front of her was kneeling on the ground at this time, holding a small basin with both hands. She was filling the basin with water from the pool and washing her body. It's you? The young witch opened her mouth. Probably because the other party was also a woman, she didn't care too much even if the thin white kimono on her body faintly exposed her skin under the scouring of the pool water. What a young and inexperienced body. Miss Maid smiled slightly and said softly, Can I borrow the pool water here? The pool water here is good. It seems to have the effect of washing away unclean things. The young witch did not speak, seeming to be contemplating something. Finally, she nodded gently. Thank you. Chapter 7:14. You are very clean. The young witch suddenly raised her head and looked at the dreamlike perfect body in front of her. She thought, how can a person be so perfect? Yi didn't intend to test the temperature of the pool, so she directly walked into the pool. It was not deep, so she easily swam to the center of the pool. In fact, it was not big, only about a few dozen square meters. She popped her head out of the water and wiped her hair with both hands. Then she looked at the young witch and said, If there is a very important person to see, then a girl is not allowed to touch even a little bit of dust. The young witch was stunned, then she seemed to ponder, and finally nodded silently. After a while, she asked tentatively, Him? She pointed very vaguely. But Yi knew that the young witch was referring to her master. That day, her master and she appeared in front of the young witch at the same time. The servant girl just smiled, and the young witch already knew the answer. She didn't ask any more questions, then she knelt on the ground again, filled a spoon with water, and then splashed it on her body again. That card, you can take it back, I don't want anything. The young witch suddenly opened her eyes. The servant girl held her hair with both hands and gently rubbed it in the water. She smiled again. I know you are in a perfect state now, but is it really okay to turn a blind eye to it? What did you say? The young witch seemed to be absent-minded for a moment. But only for a moment, she still showed a confused expression. Nothing. Yi shook her head. Soon after, she walked out of the pool, and the black flame burned the traces of water on her body and the clothes she took off. She took a step forward, and a new set of clothes appeared on her body. I'm leaving, thank you for allowing me to use this place. The servant girl gracefully bowed again. That card. If you don't want it, then it is just an ordinary card, or just a bookmark. Yu Yi said indifferently. In that case, why do you care where it is? You can actually throw it away, the choice is yours. The young priestess' lips moved as if she wanted to say something. Aya, it's already so late. I have to rush back. I came out too late. Yu Yi had already taken a step forward, disappearing from the young witch's sight. Ah, an ancient pond. A frog suddenly jumped in, the sound of the pond water, the young priestess suddenly whispered. She suddenly looked at the ripples in the pool that hadn't calmed down yet. When the pool was completely still, the only sound in the cave was the sound of the young witch washing herself with the cold pool water. Roar! A huge stick came crashing down on top of Xuefeng's head. In front of him was a monster with a green face and fangs. However, Xuefeng was not afraid. His half-demon body was enough to overwhelm the evil spirit in front of him. Bang! The heavy body of the evil spirit couldn't withstand a single blow from the half-demon's power. It lost consciousness and fell to the ground. Xuefeng wasn't happy at all because he couldn't tell the direction. He chased the large moving group and finally came to a ruined place. Then suddenly, he saw a thick fog. As for the surrounding area, there were more evil spirits like the one he had just fought. These evil spirits seemed to have been provoked by something. Some screamed in fear, some wept in grief, and some attacked wildly in a frenzy. Until something seemed to suddenly emerge from the ground. Xuefeng just felt that something seemed to entangle his legs. At the same time, in the extremely low visibility, those strange evil spirits around him also entangled something one by one and then swallowed it. Something like a tree root. Xuefeng began to struggle to attack the old roots that entangled him, but in the end, he was still defeated. In panic, he was dizzy and seemed to fall asleep at any time. Just when he couldn't resist and his eyelids finally closed, the strange light ball that he got from the gift box suddenly hit him. He didn't know what happened next. This strange ball of light seemed to have directly entered his body. Inuyasha, Inuyasha. It seemed that someone was calling this name. Xuefeng opened his eyes. It seemed to be spring. There was a touch of pink in front of him. Under the scattered cherry blossoms, a young woman of about 13 or 14 years old looked up with no expression. Dead woman? Xuefeng was stunned. But at this time, he couldn't control his body and jumped directly from this cherry tree. This seemed to be another dream about Inuyasha, but this time seemed to be a little different from the previous dream. He seemed to have really become Inuyasha. While feeling the heart of the half-monster Inuyasha, he looked at everything that happened in front of him from a strange perspective. Guilty. At this time, Inuyasha was guilty. Under the gaze of the young witch, his eyes were wandering. Yesterday, the shrine was invaded. Inuyasha, do you know who it was? The young witch looked at him indifferently at the moment, just like when they first met. The half-monster boy showed a surprised expression at this time. What? Is there anyone who is not afraid of death who dares to break through your protection? Did anything happen at the shrine? How is the thing you are guarding now? You promised me that as long as I can ask for 100 big monsters and find 100 ancient books, you will give it to me. No, who is the bastard? I must kill him. The young witch shook her head. I don't know. But even if the other party stole it, it can't be used. The half-monster boy asked in amazement. Why? The young witch said indifferently, because that thing needs my spiritual power to maintain it every day. Once there is no spiritual power, it can't be maintained. The half-monster boy hurriedly said, If it can't be maintained, what will happen? The witch said indifferently, It will disappear. The half-monster boy lost his voice. How can this be? The young witch said quietly, In fact, it doesn't matter if it disappears. My duty is just to guard it and not let it be obtained by others to do bad things. In theory, if this thing doesn't exist, there is naturally no danger of being obtained. Maybe this is better. Since you don't know, then I will go back. The young witch quickly left in front of the half-monster boy. Not long after, the half-monster boy hurriedly ran into a forest and dug up the soil under a pine tree. In the soil, there was a brocade box wrapped in cloth. The half-monster boy held the brocade box and his expression changed again and again. In the end, he sighed in annoyance. The one who sneaked into the shrine last night was himself. The conditions that the witch promised were too difficult to achieve. He should have left this place last night, but the reason why he stayed was because he wanted to see if he was discovered. That's right, it was to be safer. If he wasn't discovered, at least he could maintain a harmonious relationship with this damned woman. This damned woman's healing methods were not bad. If he was injured in the future, he could still come and find her. The half-monster boy thought of countless reasons to convince himself. But I didn't expect that damned woman to inject her spiritual power every day. The half-monster boy bitterly smiled. If I knew this, I wouldn't have spent so much effort to get it out. Now I have to return it secretly. No. The damned woman just told me this, and she returned it. Doesn't this mean that I stole it? Damn it. What should I do? Don't worry about it. A clear female voice. Why? The half-monster boy subconsciously responded to the sudden voice, and then his face changed dramatically. He turned around instantly. Damned woman, how can you… Inuyasha, your head is really bad. The young witch shook her head and then became indifferent. But it doesn't matter anymore, because I will purify you. Wait. I didn't mean it. The half-monster boy stepped back in horror. Your request is too difficult. There are too many monsters in this world. I can't defeat some of them at all. Since you can't fulfill your promise, don't agree. The young Miko-sama had already knocked a powerful arrow on the bowstring. I hate lies. The tearing pain came out of his body, and the half-monster boy's shoulder was easily hit by the arrow shot by the witch. Resisting the pain, the half-monster boy threw away the brocade box in his hand in panic, turned around, and fled. Whoosh, whoosh! There was a sound in his ears, and the half-monster boy's back was hit by another arrow. The powerful spiritual power even began to purify the monster energy on his body, making him feel extremely painful. This damned woman really wants to kill me. Inuyasha, if you dare to step into the shrine again, I will kill you. The voice gradually faded away. The half-monster boy fled to the edge of the river with a pale face, and he had exhausted all his strength. After escaping from death, he really understood the terrifying power of the young witch. The half-monster boy gritted his teeth at this time, pulled out the arrow on his body, and seemed to become weaker. He finally fell directly to the river and fainted. Xuefeng's perspective suddenly became dim, and he couldn't see anything. But another independent perspective was still very clear. It was like a soul leaving the body. No wonder when it was my turn, this damned woman wanted to kill me. It turned out that you were wrong first. Xuefeng shook his head secretly. Even if he understood the cause and effect, he didn't seem to have anything to do. But this dream was a bit long. No. Xuefeng's face suddenly changed dramatically. He was not sleeping normally, but in a coma. He fell into a thick fog, and then he was swallowed by something. What should I do? Damn it. Xuefeng was quite anxious, and he even kept trying to wake up the unconscious Inuyasha. At this moment, a faint voice suddenly came into Xuefeng's ears. Xuefeng felt that he seemed to have heard this voice somewhere. Xuefeng, are you willing to be the greedy wolf? It was a kind, gentle, and low voice. On the river in front of him, a small light ball suddenly emerged from the water. In an instant, the world darkened, and everything around disappeared, leaving only him and the floating light ball in front of him. You. Who are you? Have I seen you before? Xuefeng was full of vigilance for the strange changes around him, and the same was true for the light ball that he couldn't get rid of. It doesn't matter who I am. What's important is that I didn't expect this place to reduce my restrictions to this extent. The voice from the light ball gradually became clear. Perhaps this is the real gift for you. It allows me to come out of the cage and see you. You are. Who are you? Xuefeng had a faint feeling of sadness in his heart. He walked towards the light ball subconsciously, and the name in his heart gradually became clear. I will open the real greedy wolf star that belongs to you. Oh no, I've been discovered. The light ball's voice was a little anxious. At the same time, the light ball suddenly split into a smaller light ball and directly integrated into Xuefeng's body. Dad, he shouted out loud. Xuefeng subconsciously touched the corner of his eyes. Tears were surging out of his eyes. The darkness around him was madly oppressing him. At the same time, a strange force began to radiate from Xuefeng's soul. Remember, you must be careful of the greedy wolf. Taisetsu was leaning against the trunk of an ancient tree. He held his hands and lowered his head, as if he was asleep. If he held a long sword in his arms, he would probably look like a swordsman. He suddenly opened his eyes. The space in front of him was suddenly distorted. The servant girl walked out of the ripples in the air. Taisetsu couldn't tell whether the servant girl had changed her clothes or not. He just pulled the scarf higher on his face and closed his eyes again. Although he seemed to have recovered a lot after eating the biscuits from the servant girl, he was actually very tired. It seemed that he had recovered something like physical strength, but he was still mentally tired. Master, I sent a certificate to Izanami. You can make the decision on this kind of thing. Luochio nodded and then made a gesture of silence. He looked at the towering cherry tree again and said softly, Erex always shows me a lot of interesting things. So many nightmares. If I choose layer by layer, I can really find a good one. Yes. But the servant girl clearly felt that her master's gaze was not focused on everyone, but there were actually a lot of nightmares. Boss Luo stretched out his hand and grabbed in the air. A dim light ball was caught in his hand. The boss said indifferently, Mr. Greedy Wolf of the previous generation, this is a bit too much. The light ball began to struggle wildly. Boss Luo said indifferently, This meeting is a Christmas gift for you as a former customer, but Mr. Greedy Wolf is a bit against the rules. In this case, the Christmas gift that I originally intended to give to Xuefeng is offset. Hearing this, the ball of light gave up struggling and quieted down. Chapter 7:15. After sending the white light ball back to the place where it should stay, Yen Wuyue's world suddenly shook. The source was the fallen petals of the huge cherry tree. Countless petals drifted with the wind, as if there was a huge cherry rain in Yen Wuyue's world. The petals fell to the ground and turned into seeds. One by one, huge trees suddenly rose in the city-state of Yen Wuyue's world. A large number of active tree roots emerged from the earth, devouring individuals one by one. Feeling that the whole world was in a panic, Taisetsu suddenly opened his eyes, pulling off the key on his body. A huge tree root suddenly appeared at this moment. The key turned into a golden sword, cutting off the tree root directly. Taisetsu snorted coldly. The broken tree root seemed to be afraid of something, slowly diving into the ground and disappearing. Boss! Taisetsu frowned, looking at Luochio. Boss Luo shook his head. Miss Maid looked at Taisetsu and said, Don't mind it. Have you forgotten what Erex said when signing the contract that he had to pay the transaction fee? Taisetsu was stunned and recalled. Erex promised to give him 1/3 of the true soul of Yen Wuyue's world. But because he didn't get Yen Wuyue's world, he used an old leather case as collateral. Since this old leather case was only used as collateral, it meant that Erex needed to get it back. There was only one way to get it back, which was to submit 1/3 of the original true soul. This guy is forcibly robbing the soul of Yen Wuyue's world? Taisetsu couldn't help showing a horrified expression. This is the real world-class nightmare. Yu Yi nodded. It depends on whether Erex can succeed under Izanami's anger. At this time, the boss made a shushing gesture and looked at the huge cherry blossom tree. With a pale face, Erex wiped the blood from the corner of his mouth with his finger. He glanced at the red stain on his finger and no longer paid attention to his injuries. From the moment Izanami exposed her true form, he knew that his plan had failed. 1/3 of the world's worth of true souls in exchange for the club's help. However, when he had to choose between Izanagi and Izanami, he chose the wrong Izanagi, which led to Izanami's desperate counterattack. It was truly a case of one wrong move and the whole game was lost. But if he chose Izanami, then this 1/3 of the true souls would be extremely cheap. The club would even suspect that they were making a loss. But even so, the club would still take action. This was the spirit of the contract. Because of the choice, one side would be easy, while the other side would be very difficult. Therefore, the overall price would be relatively cheap. Erex couldn't help but smile bitterly. If he had investigated more about Izanami, he wouldn't have lost, even if the number of true souls he had to pay was more than 1/3 of the number of true souls in Yenwu's world. But Erex wasn't a self-remorseful person who would be depressed after suffering setback. He soon understood what he needed to do at this moment: try to get as many true souls as possible to pay for the club's help, exchange for his box, and then leave Yenwu's world. As long as he returned to the main world, Izanami wouldn't dare to chase after him easily, and he would be safe. The only pity was Meiji. In a certain section of the huge cherry tree, Erex looked at Meiji, who was almost merged with the cherry tree. Only half of her body was exposed. He reached out and gently stroked her face. Meiji, devour this world. This was the beginning of the cherry blossom petals floating to the whole earth, feeling the creatures being constantly swallowed, and at the same time constantly extracting the power of this nightmare. Erex's pale face began to recover a little color. He sighed. She is indeed the perfect vessel. What a pity. But Erex frowned in an instant, because he clearly felt that there was some abnormality in the body of this perfect vessel that he couldn't control at this time. The power of the nightmare began to weaken and seemed to have a tendency to break. And as the creator, the connection between him and Meiji was also cut off at this time. Who was secretly destroying the club's side? No. Erex denied this idea almost immediately. He knew clearly what the club's position was, which was aloof from everything. They disdained to do such a small thing. Erex subconsciously put his forehead on Meiji's forehead and then closed his eyes. Not long after, Erex opened his eyes with a dignified look. Hakata? Yenwu still hides such a thing? Shameful intruder! How dare you plunder my true soul? A cold and resentful voice appeared behind Erex at this time. The intruder was Izanami, an ugly body and a horrible gaze that hated everything. Erex's face slightly changed, but he soon calmed down, because he found that there was an earlier intruder in Yenwu's world, Hakata no Orochi. Ms. Izanami, I think we can have a good talk, Erex said calmly. Izanami sneered and approached step by step. Erex said indifferently, I'm not your opponent, but if you want to kill me, at least you have to pay a heavy price. If so, I'm afraid you can't keep Yenwu's world. Shameful intruder, do you think I'll believe you? Izanami didn't listen to him at all. A huge amount of water of the underworld began to gush out from behind her. Erex felt the horror of the water of the underworld, and his heart beat fiercely. As expected, facing a weak divine power, it was still too difficult for him to deal with her. Hakata no Orochi has reappeared, Erex said slowly. And there's a piece of bad news for both of us. Hakata no Orochi is collecting the world authority that you took away from him, from Sangizi. Izanami didn't let the water of the underworld disappear. She just locked her eyes on Erex. This intruder had a strange power. Even as a weak divine power, she would fall into a trance because of his magical power. Not long ago, in Yaxen Hall, she fell into a short illusion because of the influence, which gave this hateful intruder a chance to escape. Erex shook his head and said, I accidentally discovered the existence of Yenwu, and I easily obtained nearly 1/3 of the world authority. At first, I thought it was because you and Izanagi were in charge of this world, so the authority was not concentrated, so I could succeed. Now it seems that this is not the case. The fundamental reason is that this part of the authority has been completely branded with a certain brand. Its true owner is just sealed. What I got is just the owner's item. Izanami. I think even you can't do anything about this part of the authority. In the end, you cut off a small part of it, decorated it, and gave it to Sangizi, right? You're very weak now. Izanami sneered. It won't take too much time to deal with you. Since I could defeat Hakata no Orochi at the beginning, I can do the same now. Don't forget that Hakata no Orochi has just broken the seal. It's not in its peak state. But I can escape. Although I will pay a certain price, you can't stop me at all. Erex narrowed his eyes. You won't return to the main world easily. Because once you return, the coordinates of Yenwue's world will be exposed. Ms. Izanami, I think you should understand how attractive a world fragment is to those with mid-level divine power and above, right? Moreover, I can easily let Hakata no Orochi take back its authority before I leave. Damn you! Izanami was so angry that the rotten flesh all over her body wriggled suddenly. Erex said, Remember the question I asked you? Ms. Izanami, if you and Izanagi didn't make a decisive declaration in Thousand Batestone, how good would that be? Damn it. You used the illusion on me in Yashuan Palace. You really peeped at my... Izanami screamed suddenly, and the water of the underworld rushed toward Erex frantically. I can help you wash away the aura of the underworld and restore your original appearance. Erex said softly. The surging spring water stopped abruptly. Izanami stared at Erex without saying a word. Looking at Izanami, who stopped, Erex said again, Do you know the club? I know that after I leave, the club's maid will definitely not miss the opportunity to sell to you. I also know that as long as you are willing to make a deal with the club, you can also wash away the aura of the underworld and restore your true appearance. But you have to know that this comes at a huge price. After all, the aura of the underworld has been completely integrated with your soul. I think you should know better than me how difficult it is to strip it from your soul. However, as long as you let me go, this price will be infinitely reduced. Why should I believe you? Izanami was silent for a long time and finally squeezed out a voice. Erex sighed and said faintly, No matter how good it is to have a fragment world, it's just me alone. Even if there is a slight possibility of becoming no longer lonely, I will be like a moth to the flame. Even if I know that it may still be illusory. You also. Izanami suddenly quieted down. After a long time, she said coldly, Hakata, how far has it progressed? Come with me. Erex nodded. When Izanami asked this question, it proved that an unstable temporary partnership had just begun. Unripe Rice Village was still very peaceful, at least on the surface. The next day, no one found Saburo Nagato's disappearance. In other words, even if Saburo Nagato suddenly disappeared for a day or two, no one would be surprised. Since Saburo Nagato came back from the battlefield to recuperate, he would get drunk every now and then. Once, he was even thrown into the river by the servant. Half of his body was immersed in the water. Fortunately, he was not washed away by the river. However, another thing made the servants of the Nagato family talk about it. That was, Miss Chizuko Nagato had an unknown illness and had not woken up. There were no doctors in Unripe Rice Village, but there were old people who knew some pharmacology. But after the old man saw it, he shook his head and said that he didn't know what happened. However, Miss Chizuko did not show any painful expression. She seemed to be just asleep, and her breathing was steady. It seems that the maid who temporarily took care of Chizuko Nagato didn't dare to say anything. In the courtyard where Miss Tsukiheim of the Kondo family stayed, Zixing and Emo Xiaofei were discussing the next matter after calling away the surrounding people. Chizuko Nagato is unconscious for no reason, but she is still there. Emo Xiaofei rubbed his chin and said, So even if she has seen me and knows that I knocked her unconscious, and even Chizuko Nagato's coma is related to me, she doesn't dare to say it. She is more afraid of the Nagato family's punishment, so she chose to remain silent. It makes sense. Zixing nodded and then said, Nagato Munakika did not appear today. He told the public that he caught a cold after the dinner last night, and it was inconvenient for him to go out. I guess he may have been in the dungeon at this time. Don't forget, he captured a kami. Emo Xiaofei nodded, but in any case we can't act rashly now. Let's see if we can survive the third day without time resetting. If time resets, we can only let history repeat itself again. Let's go and inquire about what Nagato Munakika did after he captured the kami. If time resets again, that was to let Saburo Nagato die again. Anyway, there should not be much deviation according to the step. Zixing nodded and suddenly asked, Lord Emo, how do you feel? I seem to feel that I have recovered a little. After a night of rest, Zixing felt that her weak demon beast power had increased a lot, although it was still very weak. About 20%. Emo Xiaofei felt it for a while. I feel that I am still recovering, but it is starting to slow down. There should be a limit. Let's hold back for these 2 days and wait for the end of the third day. Zixing also nodded. At this time, the samurai of the Kondo family outside suddenly called outside the door. Zixing gestured to Emo Xiaofei to keep quiet. Emo Xiaofei also hid behind a screen very carefully. What's the matter? Zixing called indifferently at this time. Miss Tsukihime, there is a guy named Yoshida outside the courtyard, claiming to be a servant of the Nagato family. The samurai said at this time. He claimed to be looking for a maid named Azuko. But we don't have such a person here at all, but I don't think he is lying. I'm afraid there is something else, so I came to report to you. I see. You let this person wait in the side room. I will arrange it. Zixing ordered indifferently. Yoshida, is there news about the vague engraved words under the foundation of the fox demon stone statue? Yoshida, what's the matter? Sure enough, it's Miss Azuko. I told you, but the samurai outside insisted that I am a liar. Yoshida said flatteringly at this time. Let's talk about the matter. Zixing was still wearing a veil this time, but her eyes were faintly majestic. Yoshida was shocked. He didn't dare to look up. He lowered his head and said, This is the case. About the engraved words on the stone statue base that Miss Azuko mentioned, I went back and asked around. I really found a copy in a family in the village. Miss Azuko, I know you are interested in this, so I spent a lot of effort to get it. Zixing nodded calmly and said, Well done. I will tell my Miss Tsukihime after I go back, and let her and Master Nagato put in a good word for you. Show me the thing first. A scroll that was almost moldy was slowly pushed in front of Zixing by Yoshida. This guy even opened it for Zixing very carefully. Zixing had always been very fast at reading things. She could read 10 lines at a glance, and she even had a photographic memory. With just a glance, she could almost understand the content. She looked calm. Yoshida was used to observing people's expressions, but he couldn't see the depth of her expression. It seemed that Miss Azuko of the Kondo family was not too surprised. Yoshida couldn't help but feel a little disappointed. But Zixing was far from being as calm as she looked from the outside at this moment. Chapter 7:16. Hakata was so happy that it didn't feel gloomy when it was attacked by the successor of the Zhanlu sword after it broke the seal. Now, it was sitting on a hillside covered in green grass. Beside it was a cherry blossom tree that seemed to never wither. However, Hakata didn't appreciate the beauty of the cherry tree at all. It was still the unlucky Shutendaji who was swallowed by Hakata. Every part of its body could be described as a beautiful man. However, when it opened its mouth, its sawtooth-like teeth completely destroyed its beauty. However, the blood that kept flowing out of its mouth. Maybe it was a bit of a bloody aesthetic. Yamata no Orochi was holding a severed arm from a certain monster and biting it. Behind it, a large number of corpses of wraiths, 8 million gods, reincarnated monsters, and warriors had now piled up into a small hill. Of course, nothing here had a physical body, including the bones that were spat out after being eaten and the corpses that hadn't been eaten yet. Everything here was built in the spiritual world, or it was a place where souls could be unshackled. While eating the thing in its hand, Hakata looked at the cherry tree in front of it subconsciously. It should be similar to the towering sakura tree in the outside world. Within this sakura tree that was countless times smaller, there was also a girl in a kimono. What a perfect container! Yamato no Orochi couldn't help but exclaim. It could clearly feel how much effort it took to build such a container. Speaking of which, Yamato no Orochi was an anomaly among the Shanglyu clan. The Shanglyu family was famous for its superb recovery ability. The most complete Shanglyu family had 9 heads. However, since the first generation of Shanglyu family had one head chopped off by the human emperor Xianyuan, all Shanglyu family members seemed to have lost the possibility of evolving into a 9-headed Shanglyu. Even so, as long as one of the 8-headed Shanglyu family members was still alive, their bodies would never stop growing. Although Yamato no Orochi was also a gang leader, it didn't have the powerful regenerative power of the Shanglyu clan. On the contrary, it seemed to be a kind of compensation. Without the powerful regenerative power, Yamato no Orochi had a more mysterious soul power. As long as its soul was not destroyed, it could switch between a physical body and a spiritual body again and again. It could also recover itself by devouring different souls. Hakata's research on the soul had surpassed all the predecessors of the Shanglyu family. It had reached an incredible height. Because of this, in this small space under the strange cherry tree, Yamato no Orochi can understand how perfect Meiji is as a vessel. As for the person who made such a container, what a good person! What a pity! Yamato no Orochi happily caught another corpse and took a bite out of it. In a short period of time, it didn't know how many corpses it had devoured. Now, it had recovered to the level before it was sealed, or maybe it was strengthened a little. Hakata narrowed its eyes and tasted the fresh and tender soul in its mouth. The soul that was being chewed seemed to be a real soul. What a good person! Hakata laughed again. It looked at Mickey, who had assimilated with the cherry tree, and showed a mysterious smile. No one knew what it was thinking. If it is not drunk, it is always very careful. At this time, Yamato no Orochi is recalling the process of picking the sweet fruit, wondering if there are any mistakes. It can't give the owner of the fruit any chance to fight back. It felt that things were going too smoothly. It wasn't that everything was going too smoothly, but for it who was suspicious, it always felt uneasy. In the beginning, he appeared in the appearance of Shutendaji and offered his real name in front of Tsukuyumi. This real name was also a real name, but it only belonged to Shutendaji. It was something Hakata extracted from Shutendaji after devouring him. Otherwise, it wouldn't be easy to fool Tsukuyumi, the 3 noble sons. Even so, Yamato no Orochi had mixed something else into this true name, a part of its soul and body. Originally, Orochi's original plan was to let a part of itself enter Tsukuyumi's soul and quietly infiltrate her divine soul. After the 3 noble sons gathered, he would use Tsukuyumi's hand to secretly kill the other 3 noble sons. Finally, he would successfully retrieve the Yenwu's world authority that originally belonged to him. However, what Hakata didn't expect was that there was also a guy secretly planning something. Not only did he include the 3 noble sons in this perfect container, but he even included all the 3 noble sons' subordinates. What happened after that was simple. The mantis swallowed the seeds secretly planted by the Oriole and finally fainted as if poisoned. Thus, the Oriole picked up a great bargain. Yamato no Orochi, who originally planned to take some risks and perhaps suffer some damage, inexplicably sat here and enjoyed the sweet fruit. It was simply a victory without doing anything. At this moment, the cherry tree suddenly shook, and 3 cracks suddenly appeared on the trunk. Amaterasu Amikami, Tsukuyomi, and Susanoo were directly spat out. But it didn't spit them all out. Instead, some of them remained in the tree trunk. Hakuta revealed a sinister smile, threw away the unfinished arm in his hand, stood up, and walked to Susanoo. Yamata no Orochi laughed and said, "Little brat, if it weren't for that abandoned woman, Izanami, who schemed against me, do you really think you have the ability to seal me into the Totsuka sword?" With that said, Hakuta stretched out his hand and pressed on Susanoo's head. But at the moment when his palm was about to touch, Hakuta suddenly retreated. His expression became uncertain because at the moment when he was about to touch Susanoo, he keenly felt that there was a strange thing between him and Susanoo. As long as he touched Susanoo, he would be in danger. Yamata no Orochi sneered at this time. He suddenly turned around and saw a strange man not far away, Erex. Erex showed a regretful expression at this time. As soon as he returned to this space, he saw that Yamata no Orochi was planning to devour Susanoo's power. With a thought, he quietly placed a trap on Susanoo's body. He didn't expect Yamata no Orochi to be so sensitive. "Are you the guy who created this container?" Hakuta looked at Erex up and down. He had escaped to Yenwuyue's world for a while. Plus the time when he was sealed, it could be said that he had no knowledge of what happened in Kelowna and other land. It was not easy to judge the origin of Erex. Hakuta Snake, it's not good to break into someone's home without permission and take away the owner's things casually, right? Erex sighed, "You can't escape this time." "You?" Yamata no Orochi laughed out loud, his arrogance apparent. "You should need to extract a lot of power from this vessel before you have the ability to challenge Izanami, the disgusting abandoned woman, right? Can you still extract a little bit of power now? Don't joke around. Even you can be my food." "Hakuta, who are you calling a disgusting, abandoned woman?" Just as Yamata no Orochi finished speaking, a sharp and cold voice rang out at the same time. At the same time, the whole grassy hillside withered instantly at this time. In the sky, Izanami, who was surrounded by the aura of the netherworld, looked down condescendingly. "It seems that you are going to join hands?" Hakuta was keenly aware of what it meant when Erex and Izanami appeared at the same time. It had fought with Izanami many times. At that time, neither of them could do anything to the other. It was a tie. But since Erex had the ability to plan all this to steal Yenwuyue's world, he was not an easy guy to deal with. Otherwise, Izanami would not cooperate with Erex. Although there was a sense of being forced by the situation. At this time, Izanami stared at Hakuta, and Erex's eyes were also locked on Hakuta. As for Yamata no Orochi, it looked back and forth between Erex and Izanami. Now that the situation had developed to this point, it was no longer appropriate to bicker, so the three sides were strangely silent. Unexpectedly, Erex suddenly smiled and said, "Hakuta, this is the space I created at the beginning. Although you cut off the connection between me and Mickey, but in this space your power will still be affected in the end. Facing me and Izanami, you have no chance of winning." Izanami didn't say anything after hearing this. Yamata no Orochi said indifferently, "Oh? You mean you want me to surrender?" Erex sighed and said, "I just want to solve the problem peacefully. Using force is the most barbaric behavior. Including facing Izanami, I had a reason to negotiate at the beginning, but it was a pity that we didn't reach an agreement." Yamata no Orochi suddenly raised his fist, exhaled, and sneered, "The bigger the fist, the more reasonable it is. In addition, put away your little trick. When it comes to the attainment of soul, I am the ancestor. You are just a clown." Yamata no Orochi suddenly loosened its clenched fist, and ripples spread out from its fingers. At the same time, the strange space of the entire hillside began to crack like a mirror, and the dense cracks began to spread everywhere. Erex's face changed slightly. After weighing everything, he suddenly shouted, "Izanami, hurry up and take back Sanguiko. I don't need you to teach me." Izanami snorted coldly. She turned her palm and slapped toward Hakata frantically. Her attack was the aura of the netherworld that could even pollute the soul. Hakata snorted disdainfully at this time. He slapped Izanami forcefully and repelled her with one blow. Izanami! Others are afraid of your netherworld ghost aura, but I'm not. In the past 1,000 years of being sealed by you, my consciousness has been studying how to crack your ghost aura. You disgusting, abandoned woman. Hakata! You are courting death. Abandoned woman, you dare to leave Yasun Hall. You are the one who is courting death. Hakata suddenly laughed wildly. You and I are on par. You have not left Yasun Hall and sat firmly at the origin of the world fragment. I am indeed not your opponent. But you left. Stupid abandoned woman. What's even more stupid is that since you left, don't try to maintain Yen Wuyue's operation while dealing with me. And the clown over there, I told you not to be narrow-minded. In terms of soul, I am your ancestor. While blocking Izanami's attack, Hakata's other arm suddenly grew at this time. The palm turned into a ferocious tongue. The arm turned into a snake's body. It did not bite toward Erex, but it opened its bloody mouth toward the cherry tree. Just when the arm turned into a poisonous snake and was about to touch the cherry tree, it was blocked by something. Erex's body twisted and disappeared, replaced by another Erex standing under the cherry tree. In each of his hands, he held a crossplate used to control puppets. The two small puppets, under the control of the threads of the crossplate at this time, resisted Hakata's snake hand abruptly. With this block, Yamato no Orochi's snake hand was unable to advance even half a step further. Seeing this, Izanami did not want to miss this opportunity. She suddenly opened her rotten mouth and spat out an endless amount of water from the yellow springs. The contaminated water of the underworld instantly swallowed Yamato no Orochi's entire body. At this time, Yamato no Orochi let out a muffled groan, as if it was enduring great pain. Seeing this, Erex hurriedly came to Meiji's side, trying to restore the broken connection between him and Meiji. The plan to steal Yen Wuyue's time had failed. There were too many variables, so it was not good to take risks. What he was most eager to do now was to extract enough true souls from the container to exchange for the things he had pawned in the club. Mickey! Erex called her softly. On the other side, Izanami, who was crazily suppressing Hakata's snake, could still spare some strength. At this time, a part of her ugly body was split into rotten flesh and blood. The flesh and blood fell on the ground and instantly became bigger. In the blink of an eye, it turned into an extremely beautiful doppelganger, directly coming to the cherry tree. This doppelganger did not look at Erex, but waved her hand towards the cherry tree, intending to rescue the three noble sons in this way. The screams of Hakata's snake became louder and louder. Meiji! Erex put his forehead in front of Meiji's forehead again. And Izanami's beautiful doppelganger had successfully rescued Susanoo, one of the three noble sons. The next target was Amaterasu Amikami. Erex-sama. Meiji's eyelids moved slightly, and she slowly opened her eyes. Erex saw that the connection had been reconnected, and subconsciously breathed a sigh of relief. Unexpectedly, at this moment, Meiji's eyes suddenly shot two thick golden lights directly into Erex's eyes. Ah dash! Ah dash! Two consecutive screams sounded. One was from Erex. At this moment, his eyes were shot by the golden lights, and he covered his eyes in pain, kneeling on the ground in pain. On the other hand, Izanami's beautiful doppelganger's arm was directly pierced through by the rescued Susanoo. Ah, so painful! Ha 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 ha! I lied to you. At this moment, Hakata's snake, who was eroded by the water of the netherworld, once again laughed wildly. Its body shook, and the water of the netherworld around it was expelled. Idiot! The three noble sons have part of my power. My head is stuck between a door, so I won't swallow it directly from the beginning. Do you think I'll wait for you to rob it? Erex, do you think this place is still yours? It has been under my control for a long time. As I said, I am the ancestor of the soul. Hakuda's snake waved its hand, and the space of the hillside instantly shattered. In front of them, the towering cherry tree towered into the clouds. They were still in the ruins of the unripe rice village. Looking at Eric's eyes that were blinded by it and Izanami, who was shocked and angry, Hakuda's snake was very happy. Chapter 717. Emo Xiaofei was closing his eyes, doing a simple meditation practice. The origin of his superpower was ultimately from the club's development of his brain. The strength of his spirit could naturally enhance the power of his superpower. This meditation method was actually a Taoist visualization method taught by Chang Shiro. There was no doubt that this magical visualization method had surprised Emo Xiaofei in the early stages of his training. At this time, he hoped to see if he could speed up the recovery of his superpower through the visualization method. While reciting the Heart Sutra taught by Zixing in his heart, he visualized. Although it was multitasking, Emo Xiaofei, who had passed the training of controlling multiple stones at the same time, was more than enough. The bedroom door opened gently. After Zixing closed the door, she removed the veil on her face. After a while, Emo Xiaofei slowly stopped and woke up. "Why did Yoshida suddenly come to you?" Zixing said calmly. "I asked him to find the list of all the villagers in Unripe Rice Village to see if anyone was overlooked." Emo Xiaofei was taken aback, then nodded. Although he had reset the time for a year, he dared not say that he did not miss anything. He admired Zixing's action of finding the loopholes and filling in the gap. "I still have a lot of shortcomings," Emo Xiaofei secretly reminded himself. Then, he entered the visualization again. Before the end of the third day, he had already discussed with Zixing to try not to trigger anything. This time, he wanted to see if he could survive the third night and start the fourth day, which was the day of the Unripe Rice Village's sacrificial ceremony. Zixing watched Emo Xiaofei enter a state similar to cultivation and sat cross-legged on the side. She recalled the text rubbing brought by Yoshida and fell into contemplation. This day passed quietly in such a quiet environment. Because the Kondo family was the main family of the Nagato family, the people in the Nagato family did not dare to disturb them. As for Nagato Munakika, he had not left his place of residence. He said that he was not feeling well and needed to rest alone. Even his wife could not get close to him. Although it was unreasonable for his wife not to get close to him, in the Nagato family, Nagato Munakika had supreme power. No one could resist. Chizuko Nagato still didn't wake up. She just arranged a maid for her and fed her some rice soup for 3 meals. Saburo Nagato also did not appear, and the servants did not mention it much. Time quietly arrived on the third day in the silence of the Nagato family. Emo Xiaofei and Purple Star were still hiding in the courtyard, not coming out, quietly waiting for the arrival of night. According to Emo Xiaofei, when the midnight of the third day passed, he would be reset back to the first day. With the arrival of midnight, the two people sitting quietly in the bedroom couldn't keep calm. Emo Xiaofei stopped visualizing and just recited the Heart Sutra in his heart. He didn't know if he would be able to bear it if he returned to the first day. This time, he had an unprecedented expectation. Zixing could even hear Emo Xiaofei's breathing gradually becoming turbid. She suddenly asked, "Lord Emo, how much do you know about Kelowna?" Emo Xiaofei was taken aback. He didn't know why Zixing suddenly asked this, so he said subconsciously, "Kelowna, does it refer to our grand empire?" Purple Star pondered for a while and asked again, "Then let me ask you again, Lord Mo, do you know why there are so many monsters in this world, but there are no reports of them in human society at all? Monsters have great power, but the state machine can allow us to exist. Don't you think it strange?" Emo Xiaofei said, "I heard teacher occasionally say that she seemed to have made some agreement. But teacher didn't want to say more, so I didn't dare to ask more." Kelowna Two Worlds Agreement. Zixing said calmly at this time, I believe Lord Mo is not unfamiliar with the time of signing. It was on the day of the establishment of the Celestial Empire. The great man of the first generation who is still lying in the crystal coffin, and Lord Dragon King personally signed it. Grandpa, Mao? Mo Xiaofei couldn't help but widen his eyes. Zixing nodded. That great man is a person with the fate of the human race, Shinryu. Strictly speaking, Dragon King, as the guardian Shinryu of Kelowna, has some connections with this great man. Kelowna, Shinryu's fate. Even though Mo Xiaofei had seen a lot, he was still shocked when he heard this secret for the first time. Kelowna Two Worlds Agreement. One is the human world, which is the contemporary society. The other is our monster world. Zixing looked at Mo Xiaofei at this time and said sternly, the fate of the monster race is long gone, but the human race is prosperous. In another 100 years, the monster race in Kelowna will be extinct. In the agreement signed by Dragon King and the Great Man, in addition to the stipulation that the monster race is not allowed to appear in the modern society, the real content is to borrow a trace of the prosperity of the human race so that the monster race can continue. Borrow luck? Can this thing be borrowed? Mo Xiaofei listened like a fantasy story, and he unconsciously forgot the time. It's fate, it's also called luck, not just pure luck. Zixing said indifferently, but the content of this part of the agreement is only known by Lord Dragon King, the Xianyuan royal family, and some ancient core clans of the monster race. Even the core clans are only limited to those in power. But why are you telling me? Mo Xiaofei frowned. I have never heard of Lord Dragon King accepting anyone as a disciple for so many years. Zixing said sternly at this time, Lord Mo, although you are a human, in terms of identity and status, you are not inferior to some of the core leaders of the ancient monster race. Naturally, you are qualified to know this matter. Mo Xiaofei never thought that he was just a student of Long Shirua, but all of a sudden, he imagined a little bit if a group of big and small monsters in front of him were all respectful in front of him that day. He immediately shook his head. Not only could he not accept it, but he even felt a little conflicted. Mo Xiaofei shook his head, but when he thought of the content of this agreement, he immediately wondered, that? I don't mean any harm, but I don't understand. Why was Mao, that great man, was willing to agree to lend a part of the fate of the human path? After all, no matter what, I mean that Lord Mo wants to say that those who are not of our race must have different intentions. Why do you want to help us, who are a huge threat to the human race? Zixing narrowed her eyes. Zixing shook her head and said, in fact, you don't need to mind this. Moreover, to be honest, lending this part of the fate is probably a helpless move by the great man. After all, the end of the world is near, and the monster race is full of uneasiness. Many extreme guys even have extremely extreme and dangerous ideas. That is, since the human path is prosperous, then they should destroy all the human race. Without the human race in this world, the fate of the human path is naturally rootless. But in this way, it will inevitably cause the people of Kelowna to be plunged into misery and suffering. This is what the Dragon King and that great man do not want to see. Moreover, at that time, Xian country was founded, and all things were recovering. If we encountered a war with the monster race, it would undoubtedly be worse for Xian country. That great man also had to consider the ability of Xian country to withstand it. Zixing sighed and continued, although we agreed in the end and lent out a part of the fate of the human path, the monster race did not get it for nothing. First of all, this portion of fate can only allow us to barely maintain ourselves, but it can't benefit more monsters. Those monsters who can't get a share of this fate can only gradually die. It's probably in the past 100 years that the number of monsters has decreased sharply to a number that makes us fear. As for the rest, most of them have already left the major cities of the human world and entered the deep mountains and forests. There are also some who are hiding in territories that have flowed out since ancient times. Of course, there are also people like the Dragon King who will create a city where monsters can live. But in such a city, the restrictions on demons are usually very strict. Are there many such cities? Not many. There are only 7 in the current Heavenly Empire. Zixing sighed. There are also some wild ones who wander in other cities or some deep mountains and forests. However, they can't get the protection of this part of fate, and they generally die early. At the same time, they will also be dealt with by your country's special department. 500,000. The number of monsters is not allowed to exceed 500,000. This is also stipulated in the agreement. Moreover, every 10 years, the demons must send at least 100 high-level demons to serve your country. Lord Mo, you'll understand what these extraordinary powers are for in the future, and you'll even run into them. I didn't expect. Mo Xiaofei smiled bitterly. This agreement is a bit humiliating the country? Zixing said indifferently. Mo Xiaofei quickly said, I don't mean that. It's just, how can teacher accept such an agreement? For all of you, this is really a little. He thought of Zhuifeng, Cheese, and other monsters who lived a hard life. He had a kind of compassion at the moment, but he couldn't guarantee that every monster could be as kind as Zhuifeng and the others. His mood was just a little complicated. The Dragon King, strictly speaking, is not just our Dragon King, Zixing said faintly. She is the Dragon King of Kelowna. She only protects this land. Since people should be prosperous, and the fate of the monster race is exhausted, she can only follow the will of the heavens. This agreement can continue for our monster race. It is already the greatest kindness to us. What else can we ask for? The heavenly axiom will naturally abandon us and let us return to the original appearance of the beast. We can only accept it silently. Zixing. Mo Xiaofei wanted to say something, but he suddenly found that his position was very delicate. His mood couldn't help but become slightly heavy. It's nothing. It's not a joke that monsters are not allowed after the founding of the country. Zixing said indifferently. In addition, Lord Mo, the hour has passed. It seems that we have successfully passed the 3rd day. This is something worth celebrating. Mo Xiaofei was taken aback. Only then did he react. Zixing was diverting his attention so that he wouldn't think about the problem of passing the 3rd day. Mo Xiaofei smiled. Zixing looked very indifferent from the outside, but she had the essence of Zhuifeng and Cheese. He didn't know if she had discovered this. Yes, it is indeed something to be happy about. Mo Xiaofei took a deep breath. He felt that his body was full of vitality, and he stood up directly. He blinked at Zixing and suddenly smiled. Zixing, in fact, Zhuifeng is really good. You might as well consider him. Zixing opened her mouth, then frowned and said indifferently, He is still just a child. Lord Mo, please don't joke around. Mo Xiaofei shrugged and said directly, Since we have broken the nightmare of time reset, what should we do next? Zixing said, When we first entered the movie world, we came to Yenwuyue. The Fuji that appeared in the movie is likely to be the key. The only one who can write Fuji in Unripe Rice Village is the shrine's Miko. Mo Xiaofei said helplessly, As I said, there is no one in the shrine. The 3rd day has passed. Today is the sacrifice of Unripe Rice Village. During the sacrifice, the Miko should appear. Zixing narrowed her eyes. Then, the mystery of us entering here may be solved. The door of the woodshed opened, and a man in black clothes with a very indifferent expression walked in at this time. Xiao, who had not seen the sun for 3 days, looked at the dazzling light outside the door at this time. She couldn't open her eyes for a while. The man said indifferently at this time, Xiao, come with me. Although she couldn't see the man's appearance at once, Xiao was very familiar with his voice. Hearing the other party's words, Xiao's body trembled slightly, and then she nodded silently. It turns out to be another month. Please lead the way, Lord Shinji. This man in black clothes with an indifferent expression was Shinji Nagato. At this time, there was no one outside. Ashio lowered her head and followed behind Shinji Nagato. But along the way, there was still no one in sight. Ashio couldn't help but ask curiously, Lord Shinji, why is the house so quiet? Shinji Nagato said indifferently, have you forgotten? Today is the day of the sacrifice. Everyone in the family has gone to help. Only those of you whose time is up have no choice but to be absent. Ashio nodded. She could only sigh inwardly about what was about to happen and did not say anything. Soon after, under the guidance of Shinji Nagato, Ashio came to a room. In the room, 6 young women had been waiting for a long time. Ashio was the 7th. The women in the room watched Shinji Nagato come in at this time, and they all became cautious. Shinji Nagato waved his hand at this time, and Ashio walked into the room silently. Shinji Nagato said at this time, you wait here now. I will arrange it. In addition, without my consent, you are not allowed to leave this room. If something goes wrong and you miss the time, you can't suppress the curse on your body. Don't blame me. Understood. A group of young village women agreed weakly. Ashio sighed, thinking of what was coming. After all, it was a little complicated. She was already 14 years old, and the curse began. Now that she had lived until now, she naturally relied on the essence of men to survive. However, Master Nagato was very good. He knew that everyone would be very painful when facing this kind of thing, so he specially made a kind of potion. No matter what happened later, they wouldn't remember it. It would only make them feel as if they were in paradise. Waiting in boredom, Ashio thought that she had not seen Miss Tsuruko for a few days. She did not know how she was doing now. Did she have a quilt to sleep? Did she have enough to eat? Was she bullied? As she thought about it, Ashio suddenly heard a sobbing sound. She subconsciously looked over and found that there was another girl in the room. She had been hiding in the corner at the beginning, so she hadn't noticed. Were there actually 8 people in total this time? A new face she had not seen before, and she was so young? Ashio was stunned, so she moved to the girl who was hugging her knees and crying secretly. She asked worriedly, "Are you okay?" "I'm scared." The girl raised her head at this time, her eyes red. She had been crying for a long time. Ashio touched the girl's head, looked at her age, and whispered, Is this your first time? Just turned 14? Well, I just turned 1 this month. Today is the last day. The girl nodded. Originally, I shouldn't have come here, but today is the day of sacrifice. The men in the village have to help, so I can only come here. It's okay. Second Master Shin will give us some magical potion later. We will forget what happened, and we can still be happy and survive. Ashio comforted. Really? Yeah. Ashio smiled slightly, like the girl's sister, gently hugging her frightened body. Don't be afraid. I will be with you. By the way, my name is Ashio. What's your name? Bamboo. The girl wiped her tears, opened her pure eyes, and whispered, My name is Bamboo. The door of the room opened again, and Shinji Nagato walked in with a tray in both hands. On the tray there were 8 small cups. Chapter 7:18. The greedy wolf star transforms Chi into peach blossoms, the master of fortune and disaster. Greedy wolf star, slowly opening his eyes, Zhuefeng had an indescribable feeling. It was as if he had experienced an eternity of time, traversing thousands of years. He was like the stars in the sky, watching the world transform into mulberry fields. When his consciousness gradually recovered, this wonderful feeling also faded away like the tide. Only a desolate feeling remained in his heart. He seemed to have forgotten everything. Standing up in Inuyasha's body, Zhuefeng had a very strange feeling. It seemed that he could leave this body at any time and then return to his original body. What they were crossing wasn't just 2 different bodies but another kind of the distance between 2 different worlds. With the guidance of the stars that could exist in any world, the first star of the Big Dipper, the star that would never get lost, would eventually point him in the right direction. Xuefeng felt that he seemed to be a little different, but there was no way to explain it specifically. It seemed that he had grown up a lot in an instant. Everything gave him a different feeling. He even felt that he was naive in the past. But he still felt that he was still the leader of the storm chaser who liked to stand on the rooftop of the building, open his hands, looking at the city, and dreaming of flying freely. Master Xuefeng, it feels like I can get out of here. Xuefeng frowned. So he waved his hand, and sharp nails popped out of Inuyasha's fingers, and he gently scratched the air. Like cutting through a thin layer of gauze, a small crack appeared in front of Xuefeng. He stretched out his hands again, then used all his strength to tear the crack open. Although it was very strenuous, in the end, he managed to tear open a crack that allowed him to enter. The maid fed the rice soup into Chizuko Nagato's mouth, but the white rice soup suddenly slid down her pink cheek. Obviously, Nagato did not swallow it. Instead, she let the rice soup overflow from her lip. The maid who took care of Chizuko Nagato was obviously not very attentive. Seeing this, she didn't intend to wipe Chizuko Nagato. She just fed her with a spoon. The sacrificial ceremony was an annual big day in the unripe rice village. In such a boring small village, it was one of the few days where people could feel the beauty and liveliness of life. The maidservant was obviously very dissatisfied with being arranged to stay behind at this time. Anyway, Chizuko Nagato was unconscious, and there was no one at home now. It was better to sneak over to the new house. I heard that the kitchen has prepared a lot of delicious pastries for Miss Tsukiheim of the Kondo family. Should I take advantage of the fact that no one is here? Thinking about it, the maidservant couldn't hide the passion in her heart. She quietly opened the door and left. Anyway, it wouldn't take much time to go and come back. Chizuko Nagato was probably still sleeping well. Cicadas chirped. In the bedroom, Chizuko Nagato suddenly opened her eyes, and her hazy eyes began to look around. She found that this was her room. She heard that it used to be her mother's room. Shio said that everything here had not changed, so the quilt used now was what Naruko Nagato used before. Chizuko Nagato sat up, then tilted her head and touched her face with her fingers. She found something sticky on her face. There was still half a bowl of unfinished rice soup next to her. Chizuko Nagato looked at it and thought for a while. Then, she picked it up, held it with both hands, and drank it by herself. She thought of Shio, the person who was very good to her, the person who would read to her. She seemed to remember that there was a strange big brother who said that Shio could be regarded as a relative. Relatives and servants. Chizuko Nagato found that whether it was a relative or a servant, she just wanted Shio. Is she still in the woodshed? Chizuko Nagato thought for a while, then got up and pulled out a book from the bottom of a cabinet. She had been hiding the book, and her family didn't find it. Holding the book in both hands, Chizuko Nagato walked alone in the corridor outside. The surroundings were as quiet as the evening. Just as she was about to leave the old house, she saw Shinji Nagato. Chizuko Nagato planned to say hello, but she found that there were many people following behind Shinji Nagato, and Shio was among them. Chizuko Nagato wanted to shout, but she suddenly saw a strange expression on Shio's face that she had never seen before. The women behind Shinji's brother all had such expressions at this moment. The place they seemed to be walking to is Uncle Zongjin's courtyard? Chizuko Nagato blinked, still holding the book in her hand, and quietly followed behind the crowd. The time waiting for the Miko to appear was long, at least for Mo Xiaofei and Zixing. Almost all the villagers in Unripe Rice Village were waiting here. Their faces were full of piety. The altar built with the power of the entire village was still very rough in Zixing's view. However, the atmosphere at the scene at this moment made her nod secretly. Because she saw piety. As the owner of this land, the Nagato family naturally would not kneel devoutly in a temporarily cleared place similar to a square like ordinary villagers. The Nagato family, from Nagato Munakika to the servants of the Nagato family, were waiting quietly under the shed on the side at this time. The noon sun was very fierce. Even so, many of the Nagato family's servants had sweat on their faces, let alone the villagers who were exposed to the sun. With Zixing's current identity, she could naturally sit safely in the shade of this shed. As for Mo Xiaofei, he was hiding at this time, secretly observing everything around. Lord Nagato, why hasn't the sacrificial Miko appeared yet? Zixing looked at Nagato Munakika, who was sitting next to her, through the veil. Nagato Munakika's complexion was a little strange at this time. In Zixing's observation, the monster aura on Nagato Munakika seemed to be stronger than that night, but it was still very weak. If it weren't for Zixing's ancient monster bloodline, it would be extremely difficult to detect. Lord Miko needs to purify herself, so it will take some time. Nagato Munakika smiled slightly and talked to Zixing about some sacrificial matters. Nagato Munakika still seemed to have plans to promote his son, Shinji Nagato. Zixing avoided the topic and chatted for a while, but she suddenly remembered Chizuko Nagato. She asked casually, "I heard that the little girl I saw when I entered your Nagato house that day is sick these days. Is that true?" Nagato Munakika nodded, sighed and said, "Yes, I don't know the reason. She has been unconscious for a few days, but there is nothing wrong with her body. However, we can't find a solution. Now we can only let the servants take care of her. Thank you for your concern, Miss Tsukihime." At this moment, someone shouted, saying that Her Excellency which had arrived. Zixing followed the voice and saw a woman in her 40s or 50s wearing a white shirt and a red dress behind the crowd. At this time, accompanied by two women, she slowly walked over. The villagers in the square stepped aside, and a direct passage to the altar quickly opened. Zixing quietly looked at the place where Mo Xiaofei was hiding at this time. At the same time, she met Mo Xiaofei's gaze, but Mo Xiaofei shook his head slightly at this moment. Zixing quickly understood the meaning of Mo Xiaofei's action. She had never seen this Miko in Unripe Rice Village. Mo Xiaofei once said that he had looked for her in the shrine halfway up the mountain, but he found nothing. That place seemed to have been abandoned for a long time. "Lord Miko, did you come down from the mountain today?" Zixing couldn't help but ask curiously. Nagato Munakika said, "Lord Miko went out some time ago. She rushed back last night because she couldn't miss the annual day of sacrifice. To be honest, before yesterday, I was worried that Lord Miko couldn't make it back in time." Purple Star nodded and did not ask any more questions. The Unripe Rice Village's Miko walked to the altar at this time, and then walked up the altar steps with a solemn expression. Soon after, a woman respectfully delivered the imperial coin to the Miko. The white imperial coin began to shake in the Miko's hand, and a basin of fire was ignited in front of the altar. The Miko was chanting something. It was too far away, so no one could hear it clearly. It seemed to be a very ordinary ritual. Zixing didn't see anything special about it. She couldn't help but look at the cracked fox demon statue. This was the descendant of a fox demon who wandered from Kelowna to Yen Wu's world. Yusanyang was the name of this fox demon. Boom! Just as Purple Star was thinking to herself, the witch on the altar sprinkled something into the brazier, causing the flames to suddenly soar into the sky. "It's just a little trick." Zixing shook her head secretly. Looking at the villagers' stunned expressions at this time, she only felt their ignorance. The people of the Nagato family also exclaimed for a while, but Nagato Munakika seemed to be at ease. It seemed that the sacrifice would continue smoothly like this. Zixing felt that she might have to wait until the end of the sacrifice. After the Miko came down, she could find an opportunity to ask her about Fuji. She thought that Nagato Munakika would not refuse her request to know the Unripe Rice Village's Miko. If there were no special circumstances, the Unripe Rice Village's Miko suddenly stepped back at this time. Her body almost fell from the altar. Everyone was alarmed by this behavior of the Unripe Rice Village's Miko. Demon! The unripe rice village's Miko screamed in shock and anger at this time. Then, she yelled angrily, Demon? How dare you destroy our sacred ritual? Demon? Everyone stood up abruptly and looked at the altar in unison. The unripe rice village's Miko was holding the imperial coin in both hands at this time, looking very nervous. The white paper on the imperial coin even fluttered slightly. It was stimulated by the Miko's spiritual power. On the altar, a young man's figure appeared out of nowhere. He wore a fiery red robe, had long white hair, strange ears, and a tail behind him. He was indeed a demon. It's Inuyasha! A samurai next to Zixing shouted in horror at this time. He quickly pulled out his samurai sword and blocked in front of Zixing. Miss Tsukiheim, this is Inuyasha. I have seen Inuyasha's picture album. Recently, people in our region want to ask for this evil half-demon. I didn't expect him to come to Unripe Rice Village. Inuyasha. Zixing frowned. When she just woke up from this world, she had already heard the name of this half-demon. But why did this guy appear at this time? And why did he appear so suddenly? How did he come here? Looking at the half-demon boy on the altar looking down, frowning and silent, Zixing suddenly had an inexplicable palpitation. Before she could figure out what was going on with this strange palpitation, she heard the unripe rice village's Miko yell angrily. She grasped the imperial coin in her hand and waved it at the half-demon boy. Zhuefeng was a little depressed. Why did I come to such a place? When he just came out, he suddenly saw a fiery red color in front of him, and then a scorching heat came. Fortunately, it didn't burn his tail. Before he came out, Zhuefeng didn't know that he would come to this place. He just had a strange feeling that something was attracting him. Relying on his intuition, he came to this place through the passage of the strange space. But when he opened his eyes, he had a bad feeling. Under the platform, many people were staring at him. There was an old woman in front of him who was on guard. But this dress is exactly the same as the dead woman in the shrine. This is also a Miko. Suddenly remembering the horror of the dead woman, Zhuefeng looked at the old witch waving something at him. He subconsciously waved his hand and punched. Unexpectedly, the old witch's body was like a kite. She was directly blasted out by his own punch. She fell under the platform and crashed into the crowd. This was great. The people below screamed one by one, and the scene was chaotic for a while. Sorry, I didn't. Before he could say the word on purpose, on the stairs built with wood under the platform, a samurai rushed up quickly with a katana. Kondo family's samurai is here for revenge. Half-demon Inuyasha, die. Seeing the samurai slashing at him with a murderous look, Zhuefeng's eyes flashed with a hint of coldness. Greedy Wolf Star also has a murderous side. As soon as the claw swung out, the scarlet claw shot out directly. The samurai couldn't block it at all. The huge scarlet claw scratched a few terrifying wounds on his body. He instantly rolled down the stairs. No one knew if he was dead or alive. Not only the Miko, but even the powerful samurai was shot down by this demon. No one knew if he was dead or alive. The villagers of Unripe Rice Village had long been scared out of their wit. They scrambled to escape from the square in fear. The Kondo family sent a total of 2 samurai and a dozen Ashigaru this time. At this time, except for the samurai who was hit, the rest were guarding in front of Zixing nervously. The people of the Nagato family had long been frightened. Their bodies trembled, and they squeezed into a corner of this shed. Only Nagato Munakika sat on the stool at this time, calm as usual. In this case, Mo Xiaofei naturally couldn't meet with Zixing. He could only hide temporarily and wait to see what would happen. He even quietly came to the side of the Unripe Rice Village's Miko to check her injuries. This Miko might be the key to leaving. He must not let her die so easily. Suddenly, Nagato Munakika stood up, waved his hand and shouted, "Sword!" But the Nagato family's servant who held the samurai sword for him had long been frightened at this time. His legs trembled and he collapsed to the ground. When Nagato Munakika saw this, a trace of coldness flashed in his eyes. He kicked the samurai sword up with his foot, stretched out his hand, and pulled the blade out of the air. He swept out with his backhand and directly cut off the servant's head. Trash. Blood spurted. Nagato Munakika held the sword and walked step by step toward the half-demon on the stage. Xuefeng frowned, looking at the man walking toward him below. He looked a little old, but his body was abnormally strong. He made Xuefeng feel a trace of danger. Chapter 719. Nagato Munakika's slash was much more powerful than the previous samurai of the Kondo family. Its speed was also on a completely different level. Windchaser also planned to pull out the sword he had been carrying to block the attack. He just thought that he had never learned to use this kind of thing at all. If he used it, it would be an obstacle, so he simply abandoned it. After awakening Greedy Wolf Star, a stronger fighting instinct than before drove him to remain calm even in the face of Nagato Munakika's sword technique. Pull out your sword, half-demon beast. Nagato Munakika quickly cut into Xuefeng's half-meter range. The blade in his hand turned into a cold light as fast as lightning, cutting a hole in Xuefeng's fiery red robe. If I know how to use it, I will definitely use it. But, what can I do if I don't know how to use it? I'm also desperate. Xuefeng pushed violently, avoiding the cold light of Nagato Munakika's blade while thinking about how to deal with this thicker and thicker demon beast aura. The success of the Greedy Wolf Star's call only brought some changes to him, and there were also a few forbidden abilities. As for now, he injected Inuyasha's body. He didn't know if those special abilities could work on this body. But, he had to give it a try anyway. Otherwise, looking at this guy who used the sword to hack him to death, there would be no end to it. After taking a deep breath, Xuefeng suddenly stopped, and his hands hung down naturally. Nagato Munakika didn't seem to care. As long as there was a slight flaw, he would slash horizontally. Xuefeng opened his eyes fiercely. At the moment when the blade was about to cut him in half, an afterimage was instantly transformed. Nagato Munakika only slashed the afterimage left by Xuefeng. Star power, lightning speed. The awakening of the Greedy Wolf Star brought about a magical ability. It didn't need a lot of demonic power to support it. As long as the stars in the sky still existed, it could bring about a magical ability like solidifying blessings to the Greedy Wolf Star. So fast, Nagato Munakika suddenly felt a sense of danger. His eyes quickly caught the opponent's figure. However, in the sacrificial plaza, the naked eye was unable to completely capture the half-demon's tracks. The sense of crisis grew stronger and stronger. When it was so strong that Nagato Munakika's heart seemed to jump out, he instinctively moved his body. But even so, a strong force still hit him in the waist. Nagato Munakika's body flew backward, directly hitting the altar made of wood. Rumble! Looking at the collapsed altar, Xuefeng looked at his fist in astonishment. Admittedly, this punch did not go all out, but to be able to create this kind of power, it seemed to be due to the bonus of speed. He had some understanding of this. After activating the Greedy Wolf Star, his combat instincts were rapidly transforming. Master was defeated. Master has been defeated. In the shed, a servant of the Nagato family screamed at this time. He wanted to run to the square in horror. This half-demon beast had defeated the witch and knocked down the powerful samurai of the Kondo family. Now, even Master Nagato, the descendant of the fox demon's samurai, was no match for it. It was too horrible. Miss Tsukiheim, please let a Shigeru take you away immediately. Drive faster and faster. The only remaining samurai of the Kondo family gritted his teeth at this time. I will block the half-demon beast Inuyasha. Needless to say, the samurai of the Kondo family was still very loyal. However, Zixing couldn't help but smile bitterly in her heart. This half-demon beast Inuyasha actually has that kind of terrifying speed. Where can he escape to? Zixing's thoughts were like a tide at this time. She was restless. She stared at Inuyasha, who stopped after defeating Nagato Munakika. Suddenly, she had a wonderful feeling of suffocation. She shook her head and quickly recited Heart Sutra in her heart. This was originally used for Mo Xiaofei to calm down, but at this time, she had to use it. It was ironic. But at this moment, a loud noise suddenly came from the collapsed altar. A large amount of wood soared into the sky at this time, then it was burned by blue flames. Then, it fell from the sky again and smashed everywhere in the plaza. The villagers who had not had time to escape, as well as the Kondo family and Nagato family hiding in the shed, fell into a chaotic situation. Several Ashigaru protected Zixing. One of them was directly hit by the huge wood burning with blue flames. He fell to the ground and vomited blood. However, in an instant, a broken piece of wood rushed toward her again. Zixing took a deep breath and had to use the recovered monster beast power. It's just that Kondo Tsukiheim only has a human body, so this little monster beast power can't be transmitted out at all. She didn't know if she would be reset like Mo Xiaofei if she died. She didn't close her eyes and wait for death. Even if it was death, she had to witness it with her own eyes. As the young master of the greedy wolf clan, she would not allow herself to retreat in the face of death. In a split second, a red figure flashed. Zixing just felt that her body suddenly became light as if she was being carried. Then, there was a loud noise. It was the sound of the flying round wood hitting the ground. This powerful half-demon beast begged her. "Are you okay?" Xuefeng lowered his head and looked at the pale woman who was being carried with both hands. "Did you save me?" Zixing also said subconsciously. Xuefeng was taken aback, then nodded and said casually, "I don't know why, but I have the urge to save you anyway. Woman, stay aside. That guy is coming." That guy. Zixing was startled, but she found that this half-demon beast was staring ahead at this time. At the place where the altar collapsed, Nagato Munakika had stood up at some point. It was just that Nagato Munakika, who stood up again at this moment, was indescribable. One of his arms had become abnormally large, like the claws of a wild beast. It was propped on the ground, and 3 waving white tails grew out of his back. The clothes on his body had been torn apart, revealing at least half of his body, which was full of strange, bright red, wriggling flesh. A layer of blue demon beast power visible to the naked eye was entwining Nagato Munakika's body. His face had already become half-human, half-demon, which was extremely horrifying. Master has become a demon beast." A horrified scream sounded. The sound seemed to alarm Nagato Munakika at this moment. He waved his hand suddenly, and a blue fireball blasted out instantly. Then, there was a scream. The screaming guy's body was completely burned to ashes. "Damn it! You said I'm a demon beast. You look even uglier." Xuefeng put down the woman he saved casually. At this time, he had no time to care about her. His gaze locked on Nagato Munakika. "It's really ugly." Nagato Munakika suddenly quieted down. He looked down at himself, then slowly raised his head. Suddenly, his expression distorted as if he was possessed. He screamed, "You let me expose such an ugly posture in front of the world." The tail behind Nagato Munakika opened in an instant. Dozens of blue fireballs emerged around his body at the same time. With Nagato Munakika's scream, dozens of blue flames blasted out wildly at this time. "Anyone who has seen this form of mine can go to hell." Boom, boom, boom. The entire square exploded wildly under Nagato Munakika's frenzied attack. Star power, lightning speed. Xuefeng grabbed the woman's hand in front of him with one hand, but they had already arrived outside the square in an instant. "Woman, go quickly." Leaving a sentence, without waiting for the other party's reaction, Xuefeng rushed directly into the square again. Nagato Munakika was completely in a frenzy at this moment. The range of his attack was getting larger and larger. Even the original Nagato family members were affected at this moment. They were hit by the blue fireballs and burned to death. When Xuefeng returned again, he saw a guy dressed as a samurai running back and forth in the square at this time. He kept waving his hand toward the attacking blue fireballs. After the fireballs were slapped away, the samurai quickly helped the people who fell to the ground. He was saving people. "Are you not afraid of death?" Xuefeng yelled at the samurai. The samurai did not turn his head. "Of course I am. But I can't leave you to die. Don't be idle. Save as many as you can." Xuefeng was taken aback and nodded subconsciously. Lightning speed. Nagato Munakika, who fell into a frenzy, seemed unable to control the explosive power. He only knew how to release it crazily, but his body could not move. He just blindly released the destructive blue fireballs, which gave Xuefeng and the samurai time to save people. The injured or frightened villagers were rescued one by one. The last one. Xuefeng looked at the samurai who returned again and frowned. "Are you really not afraid of death? Let's get rid of this guy first. Otherwise, there will only be more disasters." The samurai took a deep breath and suddenly smiled. "Thank you." "Thank you?" Xuefeng was taken aback. The samurai said calmly, "I was lost for a while, but when I saw you saving people, I woke up a little. No matter where I am still me." "Weird guy." Xuefeng shook his head. "But you are quite like my brother and me. I am not a monster." The samurai smiled. "Don't talk nonsense. Let's get rid of Nagato Munakika first. Otherwise, this unripe rice village will be destroyed. After this disaster is over, I will treat you to a meal." "Okay." Xuefeng nodded. Seeing that the samurai raised his katana and approached Nagato Munakika first, Xuefeng did not hesitate and used lightning speed again, but the samurai stopped suddenly. "Unripe rice village? This is unripe rice village? The rhythm of annihilation? Wait, the samurai's style of speech just now doesn't seem to be the style of Yen Wuyue's world. Even if I can't see the true face, the mutual attraction between people will still lead me. It's great." On the hillside, the servant girl suddenly heard her master's voice and saw a smile on his face that had not appeared for a long time, so she smiled with him. "Master is happy again.